ready to begin.
Jim, you're sideways.
Wow, boy, there we go.
Now he's right up, and we just need to wait for Charlie.
I'm ready. Good evening. I'm calling to order the Wednesday, May 13th, 2020 meeting of the Palm Springs Planning Commission. Can I have roll call, please?
Commissioner Donenfeld,
Present.
Commissioner Irvin,
Present.
Commissioner Hirschbein,
Present.
Commissioner Lewin,
Present.
Commissioner Song,
Present.
Vice Chair Maruzzi,
Here.
and Chair Wormick.
Here.
7 members present. We have a quorum.
Can I have roll call, please? Or can I have a report on the posting of the agenda?
Madam Chair, the agenda was posted on Thursday, May the 7th. This meeting has been noticed and posted in accordance with state law.
And the Planning Commission, does everyone accept the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. This is the time for public comments. The time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on consent calendar and other items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Please note that the Planning Commission is prohibited from taking action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes is allowed for each speaker. Members of the public who would like to comment on 4A, 4B, and 5A are directed to comment under this portion of the agenda. Are there members of the public who would like to speak?
Madam Chair, we'll go ahead and begin with the public comment.
Director Fagg, do we have members who called in?
Yes, we do. Just one moment, Madam Chair.
Yeah, hello, my name's Eric Travert. I'm the designer on the project for item 4B. And I did meet with the AAC regarding this project, and they had a couple of comments regarding changing of the chimney, color of the home, and some landscape issues. So we have actually revised those plans according to the ACC's request. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
We don't take questions in public comment. But if you'd stand by when we get to the item, we may have questions.
Thank you.
Okay, we're good to disconnect. Thank you.
zone.
Hi, Mr. Janish. This is John Meyer calling from the City of Palm Springs, live at the Planning Commission meeting. I'm calling regarding the public testimony period. And if you'll state your name for the record and provide your public comment, you'll have 3 minutes starting now.
Okay, this is Alan Janish with Toll Brothers, and what it's before you is the Cody Place signs that we would like to have approved by City or the Planning Commission. Thank you, everyone. And we have the 2 monuments, one at the center median, one at the corner of Cody Place and Cody Palm Canyon and Mesquite is another monument sign. Then we have the commercial ID signs to just direct people to the community, or other signs that identify our model homes. And I think it's, the sign program that Temecca has put together is really detailed. So if there's any questions from the Planning Commission, I'm available to take any questions that you may have on our sign program.
Mr. Janish, we don't take questions at this point in time, but if you stay available, we may have questions when we get to your item.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Janish. We're good to disconnect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
This is Trina.
Hi, Ms. Richards. This is John Meyer calling from the City of Palm Springs Planning Commission meeting. You're live. And I'm just calling regarding your 3-minute public comment period. And if you'd like, you can start now and state your name for the record.
My name is Trina Richards, and I wasn't aware again that I was going to be doing something along the lines. I talked to Alan this morning. Alan said you guys were going to be calling him regarding this.
Okay, great. Yeah, we just spoke with Mr. Janish, and if you have no further comments, then we'll disconnect.
No comment.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it. Bye. Madam Chair, members of the commission, that concludes public comment.
Thank you. The public comment period is closed. We're going on to the consent calendar. It's item 1A, and it's the approval of the minutes of March 25th, 2020 and April 8th, 2020. Are there, Commissioner Donenfeld?
Yes, Chair Wormick, I will have to recuse myself from the minutes of the meeting on April 8th since I was not in attendance.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Commissioner Lewin?
I would also like to recuse myself from the April 8th minutes because I was not present, but I'm happy to move back and forward in abstention.
Michael?
Yes, I'm recusing myself from the April 8th minutes as well.
Okay, can I have a motion, and the motion, are there any other comments on the minutes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes, which includes the 3 people who will be abstaining on the minutes of April 8th?
I make a motion to approve the meeting notes.
Thank you. Commissioner Lewin?
Second motion.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Donenfeld?
Yes, with the exception of the April 8th minutes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Yes.
Commissioner Lewin?
Yes.
Commissioner Song?
Yes.
Vice Chair Maruzzi?
Yes.
And Chair Wormick?
Yes.
Motion passes with the abstentions noted.
Thank you. Our next item is public hearings. Item 2A is New Church 2 LLC for a time extension of the entitlements to renovate the existing historic community church and Orchid Tree Inn for adaptive reuse, and to demolish portions of the site for the construction and operation of a hotel with an accessory spa, restaurant, and meeting space on a 3.1 acre site located at 222 South Cohia Road. Staff report, please.
Madam Chair, staff would request that this item actually be continued to the July 6th meeting. We understand that at that point in time, the applicant will most likely withdraw the application based on the recent approval. So again, we would request your extension to July the 6th to continue this hearing to July 6th.
Thank you. Can I get a motion, please? Commissioner Hirschbein.
Well, I'd actually like to ask a question. What recent approval, planning commissioner, planning director?
Commissioner Hirschbein, the applicant received approval of the new development plan at last week's city council meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. So I'll make that motion to delay it till July.
And I'll second that.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Donenfeld?
Yes.
Commissioner Ervin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Yes.
Commissioner Lewin?
Yes.
Commissioner Song?
Yes.
Vice Chair Maruzzi?
Yes.
And Chair Wormuth?
Yes.
Motion to continue is approved.
Okay, the next item is item 2B. Just 1 second. Is anybody else getting an echo? Commissioner Song, can you mute your? Thank you. Steve Agdor, property owner, on behalf of Nature's Healing Products, LLC, for a conditional use permit to operate a 4,150 square foot cannabis manufacturing type 7 volatile extraction, transportation, and distribution facility within 2 units of a 13-unit industrial building located at 1251 Montalvo Way. Staff report, please.
About the staff report. And then we have available for discussion the city's odor consultant and also our director of special programs. And then the applicant will have a brief video presentation that he'll give to the commission, and then we'll have some other some presentations beyond that. So as you mentioned, this is a request for a conditional use permit for Nature's Healing, which is a unit within the Montalvo Way cannabis building at 1251 Montalvo Way. So what they're proposing is a type 7 volatile extraction, which requires a conditional use permit. A type 7 volatile extraction uses solvents and different chemicals to extract the cannabis from the raw biomass, and they're also asking for distribution and transportation. So as I mentioned, 1251 Montalvo Way is a building that consists of 9 units, and the space that they're proposing to lease is 4,150 square feet. So in the slide that's before you, it shows the unit that they're proposing in the middle of the building, H and I. So previously, the city has reviewed other cannabis applications within this building. There is a table that is in your staff report that shows the different units and the types of entitlements that they have received over the past year. So in Unit A, the Planning Commission approved a CUP for a manufacturing basically of candies and brownies and so forth. Units B and E, the Planning Commission granted an approval for this project back on February of this year. Originally, the Planning Commission had denied the application in October of 2019, but the applicant had revised the application after it was appealed to the City Council, and the Planning Commission ultimately approved. Units F and G are dispensaries and distribution. These units are currently open and operating. We are now looking at H&I, which is a Type 7 manufacturing. Unit J is a manufacturing, which received a regulatory permit and then was withdrawn. Unit K is a distribution and transportation, which is non-operational. Unit L is an exotic extractions, and that has also been withdrawn, and that was a Type 6. And then Floor LLC received a Planning Commission approval for CUP for a Type N, and that was approved. So as you can see in the building, there has been multiple applications that have been approved and within this building. So within your staff report, you received a binder that included 11 by 17 drawings of the plan, which includes site plan, interior floor plans, and also an odor control plan, which we'll get to in a little bit. But the slide that's before you right now is part of the odor control plan, and it shows the floor plan, which includes a packaging area, loading dock, which would come out of the rear. There is a roll-up door. There are quarantine vaults and storage facilities, and also a C1, two C1 rooms, which is where the actual chemicals or volatile extractions would take place. And those are marked in the green areas on the plan that's before you now. So the project was based upon a zoning evaluation on a previously approved zoning regulations for cannabis. So this regulatory permit was issued on June 4th of 2019, and the City Council approved the new regulations for cannabis late last year in 2019. At that time, the City Council decided to base these plans that were already submitted to be evaluated on the previously approved or the previous law, which was approved before in 2019. So that is the basis for the zoning analysis. So the property is zoned M1P, which requires a CUP for a Type 7 volatile extraction. There are no separation or concentration requirements relative to other cannabis facilities. So being that the building has multiple uses within it, the previous law would allow that to occur. There was separation requirements from schools, playgrounds, and daycares of 600 feet, and that we'll go into some maps that show how that was analyzed. So there are several schools that are within 840 and 1,200 square feet of the property. There is a park that is within 1,600 square feet of the property, and then separation from residential is less than 1,000 feet to the residential property to the north subdivision. Part of the project is to do no changes to the exterior. So there are elevations that are shown here that show the building as is, and roll-up door and a man door in the back, in the rear. And there are some photographs that show the existing conditions, which is the front door and then the roll-up door in the rear. When we discuss the odor control plan, the odor control plan includes building a box within a box, and the Planning Commission has discussed this at many times on relative to these cannabis applications, that they will build walls within a wall and ceilings, and that's the proposal here. They're proposing HEPA charcoal filters and air to be exchanged every 1 minute. Construction methods include filling all gaps, holes, and penetrations in the building so that no odors would escape, and the use of air barriers and air locks. When we get to looking at the conditions of approval, you'll see that there are several conditions that reference this type of construction method that will contain odors. So in your packet, you also have a plan that shows how this will take place. This is an example of a box within a box showing the walls, roof, and then how the mechanical equipment will extract any odors or air and exchange it for every minute. And our odor control consultant has reviewed this plan and has submitted a letter of approval, and you have that in your packet, and he will be available in just a minute. So staff has found that the project conforms to separation distance requirements based upon the previously approved zoning code. The construction enhancements to the building mechanical systems will reduce and eliminate the impacts of proposed odors or use, and it conforms to the criteria of an approval of a CUP. So the applicant will go into what is actually going to be occurring at the property, and there's a whole process of how the biomass, the unused material, comes into the site, it gets stored, and then extracted, and then it gets delivered or transported out. So we've added some conditions of approval that include air curtains at all exterior entrances, adding an airlock wall at the front entrance, and currently the floor plan does not show this. Staff is recommending that you add a airlock wall. This is similar to a cannabis operation that the Planning Commission approved along Ramon Road. It was a cultivation facility, and you had a wall right when you walk in the front entrance. There's another wall that would contain any kind of odors that might escape. Add insulation to walls. Make sure that PPE is required for each employee, and then that the manufacturing be limited to the Type 7 extraction only. So in your packet, you also received, and in an email today, numerous correspondence from residents and neighbors within the Ascena development. And I wanted to note that received some additional comments that were forwarded to the Planning Commission later this afternoon. And that will hopefully you'll have time to read those comments. Some are for and some are against. So looking at our recommendation, staff recommends that you've received an odor control approval from our consultant. Staff recommends approval of the project, and this was evaluated against the development standards of the previous zoning code. The city has completed the background checks, and the regulatory permit can be issued once the CUP is approved. So, Chair, that concludes my report. And as I mentioned, you do have correspondence, and we have the odor consultant that we can call at your convenience.
I'd like to take questions first and then call up the odor control consultant. So if there are questions of staff, starting with Commissioner Donenfeld.
I just have a couple. With respect to the box within a box, Glenn, when you showed the diagram, sort of an elevation of the building, a slice of the building, it looked to me like on my left side, when I was reading that diagram, that there was no separate independent wall as part of the box on the far left-hand side. Is that just a mistake in the drawing?
Okay, I see what you're talking about. So on the right-hand side, it shows a red. I'd have to have the applicant, because that's the ethanol storage.
Right.
Commissioner Donenfeld, to answer your question, we have a condition of approval that will require a new wall along that side, so it truly is box within a box construction.
So it's in the conditions of approval?
Yes.
The other question, and perhaps this is for the applicant as well, are we assuming that the odors we're concerned about are, in addition to the cannabis odors, the chemicals used to extract the oil from the product, from the mass? Are those also, they're volatile, do they also have an odor?
There may be a combustible odor that could be possible. The machines may be able to contain the odor within itself, but that is a question of the odor consultant.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hirschbein, do you have questions?
I do, and thank you, Commissioner Donenfeld, for bringing up that point about box and box. But to be clear, are the boxes just the CD1? Is it CD? Yeah, CD1 and CD2 rooms, and then the ethanol storage room, or is the whole unit considered a box in a box?
Right. So my understanding is the C1 units are a higher standard of a box that could contain any kind of explosion or problem with the material, then all the other walls would be also. Every room would have a wall itself, but it may be at a lesser compaction than the C1 units.
Well, that's kind of vague. Do we know what that means and what the requirements are under the terms of you're recommending?
Yes, we do. So what Mr. Malacker was indicating is that the rooms that are shown in green in the plan have a higher standard not only of construction, but also of HVAC equipment in terms of odor control. The rest of the facility, as is shown in the plans, will have the spray cell foam insulation completely around the perimeter and in the ceiling, so that it too is sealed off as well. One of the other things that we are requiring as a condition of approval is an additional airlock on the east side of the building. So yes, it will meet our requirements that we've held other applicants to relative to both the box-in-a-box construction and the HVAC equipment that would be required to contain odors.
So, the demising walls, the walls that separate this rental unit from the ones on either side of it, will there be a new wall constructed on the inboard side of those demising walls?
The wall between the other units or the walls within the unit itself?
So there's two demising walls, right? They're the walls that separate this unit from the other units.
Yes.
And when we've done box and box in the past, to my recollection, is the whole unit was a box. And we required the whole unit to be kind of re-boxed, if you want to use that term, so that there was a new stud wall up against the demising walls with sealed sheetrock along those walls, around the whole perimeter of the rental unit, not just certain rooms. There's this echo. I'm sorry. They just cracked.
Sorry. Yes, that is correct. There will be walls built within the demising walls between the units, and then there are walls within the different uses within the extraction facility itself, and there'll be
so
roof.
If you go to sheet T2.1, it does not indicate that. It just indicates the demising walls. It does not indicate any walls, new walls built inboard from those demising walls.
As we mentioned, that is a condition of approval, that when the construction documents come into us, it will be a box within a box. We know the intent of the Planning Commission in trying to control the odors.
So in other words, the whole unit gets outlined in a new box.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And then I had another clarification that you could make for me, because it's been some weeks since we've looked at a cannabis manufacturing facility, and it's just not staying with me, these different categories. What is type 6 and what is type N?
Right. So type 6 is a non-volatile. So that is when they take the product and make candies and gummies out of it and brownies. And a type N,
Sorry, let me jump in there. Type 6 is a non-volatile extraction process, and so unlike the volatile extraction, it's non-combustible materials. Typically, it's a cold water extraction process or some type of a press. Type N is the infusion, and that, Mr. Malacker, is what you're talking about in terms of basically cooking the cannabinoid oils with food products such as brownies, gummies, etc. So N is infusion, type 6 is a non-volatile extraction. In terms of odor control, type 6 and type 7 are the ones that we need to be more cautious with. Type N and type P, which is packaging, have less odor, and so consequently those are still allowed in our M1 zone districts, in our M1P zone districts, etc.
So type 7, is that the most, is that indicate like the most odor producing of these different processes?
I don't know if I would say that it's the most odor producing. I would say type 6 and type 7 are relatively comparable, but perhaps our odor control consultant could respond to that question in terms of the varying degrees of odors produced.
And then in terms of the table on page 5 of the report, how many type 6 and type 7 permits have been approved in this building?
In the building itself,
Yes.
this is the only type 7 that's in the building. There is a cultivation facility that's approved. There's a dispensary, a distribution facility, a type N that was approved recently. So there's a place that does gummies and candies and baking, and some of the units are non-operational as of this time.
So this is the only type 7, and there's one type 6 that was withdrawn. And where does the cultivation fall in that kind of hierarchy of odor production?
Well, I think cultivation is at times can produce more smells or odors than other processes. But to go back to your question about where in the city we have other type 7s, there's one other type 7 that's approved and operating out in McLean tract out in the north end of town. And there's also another one that was approved on Newhall Street in the north end of town, but that is not operating yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Maruzzi, do you have questions? Commissioner Lewin? Commissioner Irvin?
Just one. How many more of these projects are still left in the pipeline?
You mean ones that have been submitted before the zoning code changed?
Correct.
I think there's several. There's 2 or 3 left in the pipeline.
In that area?
Not in this area. There are some along Gene Autry on South Gene Autry Trail in that business park that you've looked at. Another one recently, and I think one along Williams, off of Ramon below the airport.
And they're type 7 or 6?
No, this is the only type 7 that I'm aware of in the pipeline now.
Okay.
Commissioner Song, do you have questions for staff?
Yes. Has there been a collection of reports regarding the security of the current businesses in the facility? And what I mean specifically is, has there been a list of 0 calls or no calls, or several calls because some of the businesses are already functioning?
We've received one complaint from Messina for cannabis odor, but there's no cultivation operating there. So we had our officer who does our cannabis investigations respond, and he didn't find anything at Montalvo. And we also did a follow-up inspection of the entire Montalvo facility this morning, and there was no odor and no cultivation. But that's the only call from that particular area that we've received.
I have some questions, and they will be for staff and also for Jim Priest. For staff, the entire report was geared toward odor, but this has combustible substances, and there was no report about how the volatile substances would be contained, nor nothing in the report about the wisdom of putting a volatile substance into a facility with several other substances. And even though my first question is, where is the report about the containment of the volatile substances, and how dangerous is this? And how are you requiring it to be contained?
So when the project comes into the planning office, it's routed to our fire department, and they do an analysis based upon the plans that are submitted to the city. And one of the conditions of approval on page 12 of the conditions, there's an fire department condition 14 and 15 that talks about technical policies that the city uses to evaluate these types of activities. The condition number 14 has to do with CO2 enrichment that is used when the plants, when they're doing cultivation, that it enhances the grow facility. And then condition number 15 is plant processing and extraction. And that technical policy would look at how the chemicals and combustible materials are contained and used. Though they don't do a thorough analysis of that until they actually submit the construction documents, and they would review it at that time. So that technical policy is available on the city website under the fire department webpage.
And my question's for Jim Priest.
Madam Chair?
And for,
If I could interrupt before we go on to Mr. Priest, Ms. Gedhart has some additional information about the volatile process review.
When they submit their application.
Thank you.
With their application, a complete operational plan. So anytime they're doing manufacturing, that plan includes how they're going to store their chemicals, knowing that how they're going to train their staff with regard to handling it. So there is extensive information that was provided with the original application that's reviewed.
Thank you. And then my question for the planning director or the city attorney has to do with the CUP, since this is the CUP, and what our purview is. I know the commission in the last several was very careful not to approve volatile extraction with the other applications that we approved. And is it within our purview, even though there isn't, we're operating under old standards, to determine that because there's volatile extraction in this facility, we might feel it unwise to make the findings that it's necessary and appropriate because there's schools that are close by, there's a park, and this is close to a residential neighborhood, which is close by, and it's in the middle of a facility where it could cause a fire.
Let's see.
I can speak to that. This is Jim Priest here. Under findings 2 and 5 for the conditional use permit, yes, you have to find that the development is necessary and appropriate and not detrimental to existing and future uses in the area. And then finding 5 is you must also find that the conditions of approval provided are adequate to mitigate effects of the project. If the Planning Commission believes that these hazardous materials, that there's evidence that these hazardous materials are going to cause such detriment to an extent that they can't be mitigated by the conditions of approval, you may be able to deny the CUP. I would advise on one thing, though, which is basing it purely upon distance under the old standards. I do not believe that in and of itself would be a basis to deny, because that was a policy decision made by the City Council with regard to distance requirements. However, if there's additional information about the hazardous materials that the Planning Commission believes could not be mitigated by the conditions and our technical specifications, you could deny on that basis. I hope that made sense.
Thank you. It does. At this point, are there any additional questions for staff before we go to the odor control report? Seeing none, Glenn, can you bring the odor consultant in?
Hello, Glenn.
Yeah, this is actually.
Hello, are you there?
Yes, this is John Meyer, actually calling with the City of Palm Springs City Planning Commission. Is this Mr. Takex?
It is.
Okay, great. Yeah, the commission has called upon you for your report. Thank you.
Absolutely. I hope everybody is staying safe and healthy down there. We have reviewed, there's really nothing to report other than we have reviewed it. This was the third review after some back and forth communication with the applicant, and we have subsequently found that it complies with the existing requirements, and it substantially complies with the now new requirements that they are not being held to.
Are there any questions for the consultant? Commissioner Lewin.
Thank you, Chair. If the odor consultant could repeat the last statement, did you say it does comply with the new standards or does not comply with the new standards?
It substantially complies with the new standards that were recently adopted. Where it does not is in the equipment being located out of the envelope of the building. It's just for this building and many buildings moving forward, it just won't be economically feasible to do something like that. So it does meet the standards for the original odor requirements, and it substantially meets the standards for the new ones.
Thank you. That's my only question.
Commissioner Donenfeld, you had.
Yes, Mr. Taggart, I had a question regarding odors. I understand cannabis will be one of the odors to be concerned with regarding this facility, but with respect to the volatile chemicals which are used in the extraction process, since they're volatile, I would assume, do they have odors as well that have to be controlled?
Volatile solvents used in the cannabis extraction process are butane, propane, pentane, hexane, things of that nature. We're familiar with those products having an odor, but that odor is added for safety reasons because that product is used in its gaseous form. The product being used here is going to be used in its liquid form. It is not in a gaseous format. It is under pressure put into the columns. It is under pressure removed, and it does not discharge to atmosphere.
So none of the solvents used, the volatile solvents used in the extraction process, will go into the atmosphere and be an odor issue?
No, there's a nominal efficiency gap for any extraction equipment. They operate at about 98% efficiency. So those leftover materials are off-gassed per code and per the requirements, and that's what C1D1 and C1D2 rooms are for. They're to be built to a specific requirement. So no, it is not. The intent of the building is not to off-gas odorous gases. There should be no gas coming out of the system.
Because that was my question was going to be, to the extent there is an odor coming off of these solvents, has the box within a box and the other mediation protections put into the odor control process sufficient to control those odors as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions for the consultant? Commissioner Hirschbein.
Going back to your substantial compliance with new regulations, you said the new regulations require the mechanical equipment inside the building. Is that correct?
Components of the system.
I didn't get that. Could you repeat it?
It requires the air-moving components of the system to be located indoors. The fan and those components.
Okay, the fan and those components. And why was that regulation adopted in the new regulations?
We did that because moving forward, decisions could be made by applicants whether or not buildings were applicable for a cannabis project or not based on the financial burden placed upon them. And the reason, taking advantage of that fact that we would have the opportunity to reset the rules and protect the citizens and the applicants, we decided to make sure that moving in the equipment that moves the air, given that it has an allowable leakage rate by industry standards, was the prudent thing to do.
So I'm not sure I got that whole statement. There was some economic, and I didn't get that. So you promulgated this new regulation because it ensures or goes further along to ensure that there's less or no odor leakage. Is that a fair statement?
Correct. Correct. We were able to take the opportunity to reset the rules.
Okay. And so what would, and is that part of the zoning language, or is that just a rule that's out there? Because I'm trying to understand whether this rule is part of a zone, the old zoning regulation, or is it just a new rule that was adopted?
I believe it's a rule that was part of the new cannabis odor mitigation requirements.
Madam Chair, if I can jump in there to respond to Commissioner Hirschbein's questions, no, they were not part of the zoning requirements. They're part of the administrative requirements for odor control plans. So again, not part of zoning requirements.
And the only rationale for giving relief to this particular rule is the economic argument or point?
Modernizing any building, in particular this building is a subject building, to comply with the new requirements is not feasible, in my opinion. That's just based on my opinion, though.
And what makes it infeasible?
There would have to be substantial changes to the building itself.
I mean, can you give us some idea? You know, we're trying to get to some decision here, and you're being a little vague about it.
I'm not. Forgive me for being vague. Just so I'm clear, I'm answering the correct question. What specifically are you asking me?
Well, you told us that it's better to put the fan and its associated mechanical equipment within the envelope of the building. It's better to do that. But you're saying in this particular building, it's somehow cost prohibitive to do that. And I'm trying to understand what makes it cost prohibitive to do that, and if that's really how we as the commission want to judge the adequacy of the odor control in this building.
I can begin listing items that would add to the cost. There would be significant changes to the HV.
List three of the most expensive ones.
Madam Chair, if I could just jump in here, I think the critical thing that we need to understand from the city's odor control consultant is, does the plan that was submitted to the city conform to our requirements, and will the plan, as submitted and approved, reduce impacts or eliminate impacts from odor? I think that's really the question that the Planning Commission needs to understand.
But Planning Director, we're being asked to reduce the requirement based on an economic argument.
No, you're being asked to review an application for conformance to the city's adopted codes and requirements. And so the answer needs to be, does it conform or does it not?
Okay, well, by your own consultant's admission, it doesn't, but I'll leave it at that.
Other questions for the consultant, Commissioner Lewin?
Excuse me, just 1 minute. If we could have Jay on the microphone again.
Yeah, this application absolutely conforms to the odor control requirements.
Thank you. Commissioner Lewin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I found the dialogue to be very enlightening. To the odor control consultant, is the positioning of the mechanical equipment that you were just talking about less about odor control and more about the aesthetics of future building design that the city adopted as part of its new ordinance? Is it really unrelated to odor control and more about the look and feel of a building?
With all due respect, I very rarely consider the aesthetics of mechanical. I get made fun of quite often for it. I don't pay attention. I don't know what is aesthetically better or worse, to be honest.
No, sir. I was not asking for your opinion on the aesthetics. I'm saying the placement of the equipment. And I think the meaningfulness of what Commissioner Hirschbein was asking was, are we not honoring the intent of the current ordinance if we were to grant this current CUP? And I'm not fully sure if I understand. That's why I'm asking again. Are we honoring the intent of the current ordinance if we grant this current application?
I believe so. I led this with saying that they substantially met the requirements of the new requirements while meeting all of the requirements of the existing ones they're held to. So yes, I think in good faith, this in good faith does meet substantially the requirements of the new ones.
Thank you very much. That's my only question.
Are there other questions? I have one. Have you seen volatile extraction mixed with other uses, and can you speak at all to safety?
I can speak to both of those, yeah. Quite often, multiple licenses are packaged in one building. Vertical operation and vertical integration is quite often one of the best ways for pathways to success for a cannabis operation. In general, for safety, for volatile type 7 extraction, my company designs these systems as for a living. We've designed several in the last several years. We also act in this capacity of them. There are plenty of existing codes that govern the safety and use of volatile solvents. There's NFPA 30, NFPA 38. These are well-established codes that have been around for decades. This is not a new use for volatile solvents. It just happens to be a new application for it in this industry. But generally, these are safe systems. They're verified and averred third party by a separate engineer. The extraction equipment is evaluated separately by a third party engineer. They go through comprehensive reviews from the fire department. They're held to adopted standards nationally and statewide and obviously all local standards. So we believe they're safe. We designed them. They're alarmed on multiple levels. They have visual and audible alarms throughout the system. So there's lots of checks and balances in them. Volatile sounds scary, but they can be used safely.
And have you reviewed this system for safety?
No, we are not reviewing this for safety. The volatile extraction system that goes in there has not been designed, nor has the building and contract documents, permit application documents been fully developed for a full safety evaluation. No, we have not.
Thank you. I have one question for, and I'm sorry I don't know Veronica's last name, but I wanted to ask her a question as well. Is she still available?
Yes, she is, Madam Chair. She's here at the microphone.
Yes.
Hi there. My question really comes down to code enforcement, and I know your office does a good job of enforcement. Do you do the code enforcement on this 24/7?
We are, for vacation rentals, we have that ability, but at this time we don't have it for cannabis.
And I'm not sure you can speak to it. Does anyone know how impacted code enforcement is going to be? I know code enforcement doesn't work. Am I correct? It doesn't work between 12 midnight and 8 in the morning?
We are working on developing a 24-hour complaint line for cannabis, but with the current challenges that we're facing with the budget, I don't know how, if we'll be able to staff that.
And that's a complaint line, but is code enforcement there to go out and review something if a complaint comes in at 2 a.m?
Code is not there, but I do know that we have referred them to the non-emergency line for police, and if a police officer is available, they can go.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions? I'm sorry, Veronica, I'm blanking on your last name. My apologies. Does anybody else have questions for her? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, Commissioner Irvin.
Veronica, what is your last name?
It's Goodhart.
Goodhart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that your only question?
Yep. Yeah, I was just trying to help you out, Kathy.
Thank you very much. Okay. If there are no more questions, we will go to the public hearing. The applicant has 10 minutes to present, and then members of the public can speak. They will have 3 minutes, and then the applicant will have 3 minutes for rebuttal. And if the applicant would stay available after rebuttal, there may be questions from the commission.
So, Madam Chair, we're calling the applicant now, and he'll make a brief opening remarks, and then we'll play a 9-minute video.
Thank you.
Hello?
Hello, is this Mr. Cofone?
Yes, it is.
Oh, great. This is John Meyer calling from the city of Palm Springs here live at the Planning Commission meeting. You'll have 10 minutes to speak regarding the item, and if you'll state your name for the record, we'll begin now.
Hello, my name is Michael Cofone. We've actually prepared a video presentation, which we were told would be played for the council. If not, I can play the audio.
No, we'll play the video whenever you're ready.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
All right, it'll take just a brief minute to flip over. There we go.
Hello, my name is Michael Cofone, and I'll be presenting Nature's Healing Conditional Use Permit Presentation. We are seeking a manufacturing and distribution license within an M1 zone. Our team brings a wealth of experience both to Palm Springs as well as the cannabis marketplace. Adam Schindel has run a facility 6 times the size of our own. This was for People's Cannabis Company, one of the most prominent cannabis companies in California. People's Cannabis Company has won numerous awards and boasts the largest store in California. Stephen Cavano has owned and operated one of the first medicinal cannabis locations in the world. When medicinal cannabis was legalized in California, Heaven on Earth was opened in Los Angeles and ran successfully throughout Stephen's oversight. There are several things to consider in regards to our Type 7 manufacturing license. The first will be our C1D1 and C1D2 safety rooms, then our ETS extraction units, our volatile substance storage, and our operation and safety. This will also offer numerous benefits to the community. Our C1D1 and C1D2 safety rooms feature several safety features that make them completely safe. They have 3-hour rated walls, are checked by the fire marshal, and follow stringent codes. They have unique lighting fixtures, sprinkler systems, and air exhaust cleaning systems that exchange all of the air in the space. Warning systems and alarms ensure that those entering the rooms and working within these spaces are protected. These are small rooms that cover a square footage of 461. We would like to emphasize the size of these spaces in respect to our over 4,000 square foot facility. This is because we are a distribution-minded company and that this is a feature of vertical integration. Our extraction units are made by ETS, a Colorado-based manufacturer in business since 2011. All components are American-made steel, and all machines exceed all certification standards. They are PSI, ASME, and UL compliant, as well as being certified by NSF for food safety. This company also licenses operators and provides safety courses for these operators. Another reason why we chose ETS was due to the fact that the city has already given approvals for their machines. With over 15 ETS extraction units in Palm Springs, we knew we were choosing the right equipment. Our solvent substance storage has been made to comply with all city regulations. These tanks are stored within our building in a special containment unit far from any workspace. The substances we will be using are propane, butane, and ethanol. These can all be found throughout the community at propane filling and recycling locations, gas stations, and within our gas lines. These solvents are not dangerous when treated with care. For this reason, we are taking our operation and safety very seriously. We will have an industry expert certified by ETS running all of our machines. The manager of this process will have 1 to 2 assistants depending on the quantity of work being done. Labware and safety equipment will be used, and we will be providing any safety measure requested by staff now or in the future. Further, we will be going above and beyond to meet the hazmat and overprotective guidelines, as well as the CIH and CAIH standards. There are several unique community benefits to having a Type 7 volatile manufacturing license within the city. For us, this provides specific benefits to our neighbors in the 1251 Montalvo Business Complex. The small operators within this space will rely on us to cut costs and compete with larger cannabis businesses. A Type 7 manufacturer is able to produce crude oil, a necessary component in the manufacturing process. A Type 6 business will need to purchase this crude oil in order to complete their manufacturing process and produce finished cannabis products. We can supply our neighboring Type 6 operator with a greatly reduced in price crude oil that they need in order to compete in the overall marketplace. In addition to this, cannabis cultivators in Palm Springs will be able to sell us their trim. This is a byproduct of the cannabis cultivation process. Trim contains parts of the cannabis plant that are not used for recreational consumption because of their low terpene counts. We can take this biomass and create finished cannabis distillates, further reducing waste because cannabis cultivators will no longer have to dispose of their trim. This segues directly into our next topic of discussion, our odor control plan and considerations. The City Council enacted the strictest policy for odor control in the world. This recent change is something that we adamantly agree with. We've watched City Council meetings to ensure that we understood what the Council and residents were seeking to achieve with these new policies. We believe strongly, as do the experts that worked with us to develop our plan, that we have the most comprehensive odor control plan in the world. 15,000 made a very important statement that adequately surmises odor control. He described the difference between a plan and a requirement. A requirement ensures that locations follow their plans and implement them. We find it very unfortunate that businesses have not followed their plans or put time into developing a working solution to any odor issues. For this reason, we have developed a plan that we think can be adopted by other cannabis operators in order to fulfill their own requirements. In our building, we've created several box-within-a-box spaces, as well as simple policies that ensure no odor leakages. All walls are enclosed by a box within a box. The yellow line surrounding our building indicates the first box within a box sealed walls. There are further red lines indicating other rooms that are also box within a box areas. These areas have been chosen to have box within a box walls due to their exposure to high quantities of cannabis. Both our C1D1 and C1D2 rooms, as well as our quarantine vault and secure storage, will feature this odor control protection. Our entire building is also fitted with Urban Grow unique odor control systems. When viewing the building from the side, we can see how these different spaces are treated. Several rooms have their own box within a box, as well as the overall structure being a box within a box. You can also see how every room is treated with Urban Grow's unique odor control systems. There are 5 individual exhausts located on the roof. This multi-exit system ensures that there is no way an odor issue can be present. Any single failure within our space will leave 4 other exhausts still working. When the issue is detected, we will quickly identify it, fix it, and continue operations without ever leaving an odor control issue for our community. Our odor control systems and their placement within our facility is key to our plan. The most notable aspects of this is the odor control systems at every entry point of the space. There is an immediate system at the entryway door to ensure no odor leakage. Continuing into the first room, there are 2 exhaust pipes cleaning the air. This ensures the entry room is completely odor-free when any door opens to the outside. Before any cannabis product is opened, it must continue through another clean room that has another 2 exhaust pipes cleaning the room. This means that all cannabis products will move past 5 unique odor control exhaust pipes before being opened. All rooms in the space have at least 1, but a maximum of 6 exhaust pipes feeding the 5 rooftop exit points. Unique PHI systems are used for our odor control system.
When the unit turns on, it produces ionized hydrogen peroxide molecules, which are distributed to every cubic foot of air in your entire home. Every time an ionized hydrogen peroxide comes into contact with bacteria, viruses, mold spores, VOCs, and odor, it quickly breaks down and destroys the air quality contaminants on the spot. The system also passes a charge off to all the dust, dander, pollen, and particulates in the air, which causes them to stick together. That increase in size will make your existing filter equipment more efficient at capturing these particles.
An example of this technology working successfully can be found in Winslow, Arizona, where a company called the Medicine Room successfully utilized urban grows technology to expand their grow operation into a 15,000 square foot facility that is completely complaint-free and odor-free. I'd like to thank you for listening to our presentation and to surmise all the reasons to approve. We are in compliance with all ordinances for an M1 zone. We are complying with zero tolerance for odor. Our odor control has multiple rooms within a room. We will have created several jobs in a post-corona economic environment. We will be spending an estimated $2.5 million in our project, and we will be creating a symbiotic relationship with other building tenants and businesses as a Type 7 operator. This concludes our presentation for our conditional use permit. We welcome you to ask us any questions about our odor control plan, manufacturing plan, or any other aspect of our business. We have several experts ready to address any of your concerns or questions, and we look forward to operating within the city of Palm Springs. Thank you.
Thank you. Where are we with time?
Madam Chair, the applicant's presentation time has concluded. We are dialing the next speaker. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, is this Mr. Cavarno?
Yes, sir.
Hi, this is John Meyer. I'm calling from the city of Palm Springs here live at the Planning Commission meeting. I'm calling regarding your public comment time that's about to start now. And if you'd like, just can you please state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak on the item.
Yes, so thank you for having us. My name is Stephen Cavarno. I'm the CEO of Nature's Healing. And although this specific company itself is brand new, I've worked in cannabis for 7 years, and it all kind of feels like one big, long journey. So it's really exciting to be here. Throughout my 7 years working in cannabis, I've successfully developed a proven network of reliable cannabis suppliers and professionals from all facets of the supply chain, which I will use to organically expand our distribution network. My job for Nature's Healing is to use my industry expertise to ensure that we exclusively work with top-notch people and products to provide the best quality for our customers. It has been my absolute highest priority to assemble the best team possible. And I'm wise enough to also include some non-cannabis related professionals as part of our team as well. Our team consists of Adam, is a very experienced operator that I know and trust. Steve, who has extensive experience in licensing and regulations. Bruce, who's the ex-vice president for Johnson & Johnson and an expert dealing with regulation, distribution, and compliance. And Mike, who attended Oxford and will be bringing technical systems as our chief of staff. So more about the business. At our core, we're a distribution company. Our primary focuses will be sales, transport, packaging, retail business consulting, and brand placement. We understand the distribution market is saturated, so we believe that we must dynamically position ourselves for success and diversify our services by also obtaining a Type 7 manufacturing license. So we are primarily focused on distribution, but the Type 7 license gives us the ability to create a complete menu of cannabis products, which is critical for our success. So we understand the city's concerns about odor, and we have embraced a comprehensive and proactive approach to resolving all of the relevant requests. And, I'm just thankful for you guys hearing this out. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and we're good to disconnect.
Hello, this is Ardeen Thompson.
Hi, Ms. Thompson. This is John Meyer calling from the City of Palm Springs here live at the Planning Commission meeting. I'm calling related to your public testimony period. And if you can, just state your name for the record, and we'll start the 3-minute period now.
Thank you. My name is Ardeen Thompson. I'm chairperson for the Asina Neighborhood Organization. Thank you for accepting my call. This evening, you will be considering granting a CUP to Nature's Healing on Montalvo Way, Type 7 manufacturing for cannabis. This manufacturing method, as you know, uses ethanol, which is a highly volatile substance. A conditional use permit would purposely locate a hazardous manufacturing facility within 700 feet of homes, within 820 feet of a special learning school, and within a half a mile of a Asina community. On December 4th, 2019, the Palm Springs City Council created the Green Zone along the I-10 corridor and stipulated that cultivation and Type 7 manufacture be located there to avoid this very risk to life and property. Nature's Healing application is grandfathered in under the obsolete regulation. We are now considering setting aside that decision and putting families, children, and private property in danger because of the date on the application. I read the entire staff report, and yet I did not see any information regarding safety measures that will be built into the requirements for this cannabis business to be granted a CUP. With the possibility of an explosion due to the volatility of the chemical mix they are proposing, what are the plans to avert such an emergency? I am particularly concerned about this because Palm Springs is facing significant budget cuts that will undoubtedly affect our fire, EMT, and police departments. Because this cannabis business is so close to several residents, I do not feel the CUP should be granted at this time. Cannabis Type 7 manufacturing really belongs in the Green Zone near the I-10 corridor, as our current zoning codes require. Grandfathering in a Type 7 cannabis operation and granting a CUP is a tremendous risk. While the city may be indemnified by the business, I am not confident that the minimum insurance requirements could possibly cover the damage, injury, and potential loss of life from a potential explosion. Type 7 manufacturing also has the potential for producing cannabis odors that can permeate our neighborhood. And again, with the budget cuts, they're coming shortly. Will Palm Springs be in a position to have code enforcement people work 24/7 to respond to odor violations? By granting a CUP to Nature's Healing, you are putting employees, residents, and 2 schools, along with other nearby industrial operations, at risk because of the proximity of this enterprise. Please consider all the ramifications of your vote for your citizens and neighbors who live, attend school, and work within the shadow of this proposed hazardous manufacturing plant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. We're good to disconnect.
Thank you.
Hello?
Yes, hello. Is this Mr. Aguilar?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm calling from the City of Palm Springs here live at the Planning Commission meeting, here to take your public testimony. And if you can, just state your name for the record and we'll start your 3-minute period, public comment period starting now.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Aguilar.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you.
Hello? Okay, here we go. Yes, this is Steve Aguilar. How are you?
Mr. Aguilar, if you would go ahead and make your public comments, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear us?
Okay. Can you hear me okay? Because I'm getting a little feedback thing.
Yes, Mr. Aguilar, we can hear you fine. Your public comment period will start now.
Okay. Okay. Commissioners, thank you for your time. I'm going to just cut to the chase on this thing. You know, we acquired this building in an M1 zone. We specifically looked at the ingress and egress to this property. There's only one way going into this property. We checked and verified all setback requirements that were in place at the time that we submitted the licensing. There's a sheet which was included in the package we submitted that shows distances from other warehouses. We are far better set back than just about anything that's been approved before. The wind chart, which was also submitted, shows that the wind blows from north to south. The scene is a half-mile away. There's cannabis warehouses all over the place that are within 400 feet of residential. So we far exceed anything that's already approved and in process right now. This particular building's had a substantial amount of upgrades done to it. And this particular applicant is, done a substantial job in regards to the box within a box, the urban growth facility, air systems they're putting in there. They've got their parking and loadings within the building itself, which is, square footage that they're losing to make sure that they contain the odor within the box within a box. They've gone above and beyond almost every project that's already been approved in the city. In fact, the 4 most recent projects I think you did were this exact same system, exact same box within a box, the exact same actual urban grow filtration system. As far as safety and everything, this thing is highly governed by the fire department, and when this is in plan check, the fire department will have extensive input in regards to the volatility aspect, storage of the chemicals, and everything related to those C1, C1D2 rooms. This is not something that's going to slide by. This is something that they take very seriously. And this process of essential oils has been done for hundreds of years with all different types of oils and stuff that are already out in stores that aren't even cannabis related. So it's not a unique system. It hasn't been around for a short period of time. It's been around for a long time. This particular operator is very well schooled in his business practices and has got a solid team with him. And I think that we exceed the city's expectation by a long shot. And the equivalent when you're talking about, the fire hazards that the lady just mentioned a minute ago, this is less than the hazard of being next to a gas station or even Home Depot where you got propane tanks sitting out in front of the store in the sun and people walking by smoking and everything else. This is a whole different level. It's contained within a bomb shelter, basically. So the risk factor is little to none. And as far as the owner of this building, my partner has been going by the building twice a week. There's no way that we're going to get an odor control plant before we would hear about it first, and we are all over it with the tenants. So we have done everything we possibly can to meet every guideline, and I believe that we've exceeded the current guidelines. So we look forward to any comments, and we'll hopefully get on approval here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We're good to disconnect.
Enjoy this Verizon ringback tone while your party is reached.
Hello?
Hi, Miss Tarina.
Yes.
Hi, my name is John Meyer. I'm calling from the City of Palm Springs here live at the Planning Commission meeting.
Yes.
Here to take your public testimony, and if you may, just say your name for the record, and we'll start your 3-minute public comment time now.
Okay, thank you. My name is Elan Tarina, and I live in Asina. I provided a more detailed email for your packet, which I hope all of you have had a chance to review. I am strongly opposed to a Type 7 volatile extraction cannabis grow manufacturing facility at 1251 Montalvo. First of all, it is too close to residential neighborhoods and schools for the dangers associated with such volatility. Second, the city has adopted and promised 24/7 coverage of a zero odor mandate, but so far has been unable to execute it successfully. Desert Highlands and Demuth Park continue to struggle with unresolved odor issues. How can you conscientiously approve to subject additional neighborhoods to such issues? Also, an extreme cannabis odor issue was reported to code compliance by an Asita resident on the evening of May 1st. But there was no follow-up until the next day. Odors must be investigated at the time they are produced, and we have been promised that that would be done. If that cannot be accomplished currently, what hope do we have once budget cuts are implemented due to Mayor Corps' projected $78 million shortfall in tax revenue due to COVID-19? I urge you to deny this CUP application, but if you feel you must approve it due to the unfortunate grandfathering clause that the Palm Springs City Council added to the updated cannabis zoning regulations, please protect your residents and neighbors with the following stipulations at a minimum. Number one, a thorough review of the site modifications and extensive inspections of the construction process to ensure compliance with all required modifications. 2, enforcement of the 24/7 365 zero odor code. And 3, regular periodic city inspections of the HVAC carbon filters in the facility to confirm their successful regular maintenance. And to just piggyback onto what Veronica said, she actually illustrated my point exactly. The fact that we don't have somebody that can come out when a complaint is made. Having somebody come out the following day, or probably worse in most cases, does no good. Nobody's going to be able to tell where anything is coming from. So I thank you for your time, and look forward to your vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trina. We're good to disconnect.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, that concludes public comment.
Thank you. Is the applicant here and they have 3 minutes for rebuttal?
Yes, just one moment and I will dial them in.
Hello, this is Mike Kafan.
Hi, Mr. Kafon. This is John Meyer again with the City of Palm Springs Planning Commission meeting. You have 3 minutes to make any remarks or rebuttal, and that comment period starts now.
Before we begin this, may I request that Adam Schindel be the one to respond? His number was included for public comment, and he is our operator and most fit to make this rebuttal.
Yes, we'll give him a call right now. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
Enjoy this Verizon ringback tone while your party is reached.
Hello?
Hi, is this Adam Schindel?
Yeah, this is Adam Schindel.
Hi, sir. I'm calling from the City of Palm Springs Planning Commission meeting, calling regarding a 3-minute rebuttal period or remarks period, and you're in front of the Planning Commission, and your 3-minute period will start now.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you for your time, and I hope all are well and safe out there with the whole COVID issue going on. My name is Adam Schindel. I'll be on-site operations manager overseeing productivity, quality, maintenance, inventory, and overall safety of the facility. I have been involved in legal cannabis industry for 6 years, operating under strict 215 guidelines. In 2008, I became an operations manager for People's Cathedral City Manufacturing Laboratory. During my time with People's, no violations were cited and no injuries or safety issues or odor complaints reported. Highlighting my understanding of volatile manufacturing process, I have been certified by Extraction Tech Solutions, ETS, for machine operations. Extraction Tech Solutions XT70 meets and exceeds all requirements for volatile manufacturing compliance. Palm Springs currently has 15 of these units approved and operating in city limits. We will also be working closely with Palm Springs Disposal Services to dispose of any waste from process in an environmentally friendly manner, where a bioactive solution is introduced to reduce odor and decompose waste. I'm confident with all necessary precautions and safety measures taken into consideration, we will be a flagship for Type 7 facilities. Thank you for your time and consideration. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
At this point, since you're done with your rebuttal, if you would stay there and we'll have the commissioners ask questions. Commissioner Maruzzi, I believe you raised your hand. No, you didn't. Are there questions of the applicant? There being none from the commission, I have one, and it concerns COVID. Is there room in this facility for social distancing of your employees, assuming that this virus may be with us for a while, and can the employees wear masks?
Definitely. Masks will more than likely be mandatory throughout the facility while we were working. So I don't think that'll be an issue. And as far as social distancing, we'll have more than enough room to have a 6 feet distance between each other.
And can you just describe to us the safety procedures you utilize with the volatile chemicals?
As far as safety procedures, of course, entering the main facility, I would be wearing all my PPE, which is all my protective equipment, which would be a lab coat, safety glasses, mask, non-slip shoes, ear protection, and grounding straps. As far as that goes, then I would go to a preoperative checklist, which includes checking fluids, checking electric boxes, checking for any kind of leaks, cracks, wear throughout the system. This includes, the chilling unit, heating unit, extraction unit, the distillation units, each operator having their own checklist that will then be signed off by the on-site manager. Then we will be going and retrieving our solvents from our solvent containment and start our workday. Everything will be contained within our C1D1 rooms or in our solvent storage.
Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. The public hearing is closed.
Madam Chair,
Kathy, I'm
Commissioner
sorry,
Song.
I can't see Commissioner Song. Commissioner Song, if you have questions, if someone can see the whole commission, would they let me know? Commissioner Song?
Yes, I had 3 questions for the manager. When there is work being done, are you there with the employees for the hours of operation, or are they shifts in which you will not be in the premise? That's number one.
I will be there.
Number two.
I'm sorry.
If you'd ask the questions one at a time.
So in the beginning, I will be there for the whole shift, and as we grow, we will definitely be looking to fill further management positions. But, in the beginning here, as we get going, it'll be a single shift, and I will be there throughout the work shift, yes.
Tell us about the notifications or the verifications of the fact that the mechanical equipment are working.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Tell us about the different devices, control management devices, in which alerts you if the system is working or not working.
Okay, so the system will, in each room will have a gas detection meter, and then we will all have gas detection meters on hand. So during the process, we will be probing the machine to see if there's any kind of gas leaks or it detects any kind of gas leak. And then as far as that, the rest is all visual. You'd be looking for scuff marks. I mean, the system is basically stainless steel, so there's really nothing really to go wrong other than, gaskets, where we will be visually inspecting those after each use and furthermore. So, I mean, as far as, visually, it's pretty apparent if we have an issue. And if we have a major leak or anything like that, the alarm will definitely let us know.
So when the alarm lets you know, when that happens, do your staff, including yourself, know what steps to take?
Of course. I'm trained by Extraction Tech Solutions for these issues. So, yeah, definitely, there is a soft alarm first. And usually, 99% of the time, it's user error, and it's someone not tightening up a connection correctly, which can be quickly resolved. But if there is any kind of, major issue, that is what the C1D1 room is designed for, is to contain that issue.
In addition to that, I believe that you have a pretty complicated security system in which the rooms have to be recorded. Who reviews those videos that are being recorded, and how often?
That would be a question for Michael or one of those guys. I'm not overly sure who's, on site. I'm sure we're going to have a 24/7 security there overseeing, everything going on. But furthermore, I'm not sure who is going to be reviewing videotapes. And I'm sure there wouldn't be any kind of reviewing unless we had an issue with that.
So my last question. So my last question is, all the carbon filtering devices, the air conditioning units, the exhaust equipment, the staff, including yourself, are knowledgeable on understanding when something is functioning or not, and who to call to repair that when it is in disrepair.
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we have an HVAC company that we are working with, and, we definitely call them out if we have any kind of issue and resolve the issue.
Commissioner Lewin, you had a question?
No, Madam Chair. Maybe I was moving my hand unintentionally, but I did not have a question of the applicant.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has a question? Thank you very much. The matter is before the commission.
We're good to disconnect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't we start with general comments before we move forward. Commissioner Maruzzi, do you want to start?
Yeah, I had to unmute. The city council made the decision to allow these types of operations to be grandfathered in. They made that decision. And apparently, from what we heard from Flynn, we have to follow the zoning and the ordinance that existed at the time. I feel comfortable that the odor control consultant's expertise is sufficient with the box within a box, and that the odors will be contained. It sounds like there is no more state-of-the-art approach to this sort of thing. So I feel confident about that. Regarding the volatile chemicals, and the fire department, that is their job, is to review plans to make sure that these explosions and other things either don't happen and or are contained. So I actually don't see any reason why, under what circumstances, we could deny this.
Commissioner Donenfeld?
I have to agree with my fellow Commissioner Maruzzi. None of us like this. None of us like that we were put in a position where we have to approve these particular kinds of operations, which more likely than not will produce odor. But it is the law. I don't see any way under the controlling zoning law or law regarding these types of facilities that we could turn this down. I think this particular applicant has done a very good job of mitigating potential odor issues with respect to the volatility of the chemicals and potential safety issues. I think we have to rely on the fire department to make sure that with respect to potential fires and other types of disasters, they will make them comply with what the city requires all type manufacturers to do. So I see no reason not to approve this application.
Commissioner Song?
I'm also in agreement. Where I'm more interested is on the ongoing inspection and accountability. And that will be the conditions that I would like to develop with my fellow commissioners. With the challenges of COVID-19 that we're all going to go through, how do we ensure that the building is running properly is what is concerning, and that's something that needs to be clarified.
Commissioner Hirschfein.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns about the volatility. I think the fire department is well staffed, or their ability to figure that part of it out is I'm satisfied with. I don't think we need to concern ourselves with that. I have a concern about potential enforcement having to do with how we're moving forward with our manpower resources, both under Veronica's group and police group and fire group, as it pertains to odor control. And to me, it doesn't seem effective to refer somebody who calls in after hours to a non-emergency police number. I think in the best of times, we want the police to come out on an emergency basis, and now we're saying we're looking at staff cuts, a non-emergency situation. I just think that the enforcement piece of this leaves a gap, and I would consider not voting for it under those conditions.
Commissioner Irvin?
This one kind of seems like City Council has kind of decided a little bit on, what we can do with these. These have been grandfathered in. It's just kind of, there's nothing that really we can see or do to make any change. So I also will be agreeing with Doug and also Peter with, approving this project.
Commissioner Lewin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really enjoyed the conversation tonight, and I learned a lot. And I read every single comment that was submitted to us officially. So I really understand when residents are frustrated with the concept of grandfathering in properties. But the council, in their wisdom, made that determination when they wrote their new policy. And so it really does matter when a date is decided when something can or can't happen. In this case, it's clear that the applicant does meet the date requirements, is grandfathered in, and therefore this is a fair use of the property. And it actually is in line with all the adjacent tenants within the same building. And maybe if it was an outlier within the building itself, I might have a tougher time with it. But I feel like it would be arbitrary for me to vote against this applicant when the city agrees that they conform, the law agrees that it conforms, the odor consultant agrees that it conforms, and the issues of enforcement that I may be concerned with is not within our purview as the Planning Commission. It's up to the city manager and the city council to allocate the resources to ensure the compliance with this type of business. And so I will be voting in favor of the applicant, and I'm very much moved by everyone's comments, but I feel confident that this is the right decision for me to make on this particular issue. Thank you.
I will be voting against this, and for two reasons. I can't make the second finding that this is necessary and appropriate in this location. I do think this is a CUP. It is a CUP where we still have balance. We can look that it meets the requirements, but and I have no concerns about the odor. I think it meets the same standards that we've required of the other applicants in the building. I am concerned about the volatility, and I'm concerned about the volatility given the adjacencies to the project. I do believe it's probably not in our purview to look at the enforcement aspects, but the enforcement aspects have been a problem. They've been a problem all the way through, with the promise of the city that we would have no odors and no leakage, and they would be full enforcement. There really isn't enforcement after midnight until 8 a.m. When it's a minor matter. So I personally will not vote for this. I do ask that if the commission is making motions, that you look seriously at the inspections, both of the carbon filters and also the inspections of the volatile chemicals. I think Maria Song mentioned that. I think it's appropriate in the motion, but since I'm not making it, I won't add those things myself.
Chair, if I could direct the Planning Commission to the conditions of approval, there is a condition, planning number 12, on inspections. It says inspections of mechanical equipment shall be required at 3 months, 6 months, and then after the biannual basis by an independent third party chosen by the city. So we've added this condition on other applications. Just wanted to point that out.
And does that condition include the equipment that deals with the volatile chemicals?
Yes, it would involve that also.
Thank you. The matter, Commissioner Donenfeld?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the staff report on this item. And having heard from Mr. Mulliker regarding the inspection provisions in the conditions of approval, I'm not going to add anything to that. I'm also not going to add anything to COVID because I don't think, number one, it's in our parameter to talk about health issues regarding the disease. And secondly, we're just beginning this. I think the city is going to have to give all of us some direction about how we deal with distancing, masking, and all of that. We have none. So we have no authority or jurisdiction right now to even discuss it or make it part of our deliberations, so I'm not going to bring that into my motion. It's a simple up or down on the staff report.
And I second that.
Would you, are there any comments on the motion? Commissioner Song?
I would be in favor, but I would like to offer a modification. And that modification will be to add the first month because this, compared to other facilities that we have reviewed, has the solvent processing issue. And the first month is always critical, even in construction. When all the equipment and the building improvement comes together, it's during the first month that everything has to be calibrated and honed in.
I would agree to that addition that Ms. Song has just made.
Commissioner Maruzzi?
That's regarding planning condition 12. So you're saying that instead of it saying required of 3 months, 6 months, you're saying first month, then 3 months, then 6 months?
That's correct.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Donenfeld?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
No.
Commissioner Lewin?
Yes.
Commissioner Song?
Yes.
Vice Chair Maruzzi?
Yes.
And Chair Wormick?
No, because I can't make the second finding.
Motion is approved 5-2.
Thank you. Okay, does anybody want to take a 5-minute break before we do the next item? Commissioner Irvin would like to take a break. It is 7:21. We'll be back here at 7:28.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
That's a 10-minute break, not a 5-minute break. Is that correct? Lynn, I just want to say as a just an observation.
Okay, Madam Chair, we're ready to go ahead and begin.
Thank you. We are at item 2C, which is a public hearing item. It's the City of Palm Springs for a zone text amendment to establish requirements for the provision of EV electric vehicle charging stations. Staff report, please.
Madam Chair and members of the Commission, we have an item before you to amend the city's zoning code relative to the standards for electric vehicle charging stations. As you may recall, earlier this year in February, the Planning Commission approved an ordinance amendment which stated that electric vehicle charging stations are permitted use and also referenced the California Green Building Standards Code for the installation of EV charging spaces. Furthermore, the City Council recently adopted a resolution to adopt civil penalties for parking in a designated EV charging space without being connected to the charger. So with these two items in place, we are ready to move forward and actually adopt numbers of parking spaces that will be required to have EV chargers. In terms of our reference to the Green Building Code, it only requires that EV charging spaces be pre-wired for future charging equipment. And so what that means is it would require property owners to stub out the electrical connection for it, but they wouldn't be required to install the pedestal or the charging cord. The proposed ordinance that you have before you this evening will require them to install that equipment for new non-residential development, renovated non-residential development, and then new multifamily development. Just by way of background, there's a couple of things to understand. In terms of the charging equipment for electric vehicles, there's essentially three levels. Level 1 is 120 volt service. This is typically what many people have at home for charging their cars. For a standard plug-in hybrid vehicle or for an electrical vehicle, fully electric vehicle, it will take between about 5 hours to 8 hours to charge a car. The next is level 2, which is 240 volt service. For a plug-in hybrid, this will take about 2.5 hours to fully charge the vehicle. For a fully electric vehicle, it will take approximately 4 hours to fully charge it. And then the third level is level 3, which is direct current fast charge. This is more commonly associated with the Tesla chargers that we have available here in the city and elsewhere, and that provides 480 volt electrical service. In terms of the proposed ordinance, it would require level 2 or better, and so that would mean 240 volt electrical service. In the Green Building Code, again, as I had mentioned, it talks about only requiring that they be pre-wired, and in the Green Building Code, it does require 240 volt electrical service. One of the other things to understand, it's not specifically addressed here in the proposed ordinance, is that property owners can charge fees for the use of the equipment. The reason for that is it helps them to defray the cost of installing the equipment, and we can get into the costs if you'd like to later on in terms of what that might be. There is no limit, however, on the fees. There's not anything I could find in the California state regs about the limits on the fees that can be charged. I will tell you that just from personal experience, what you typically see for a level 2 charger is about $2 to $3 an hour. And then for the level 3, where there's a fee associated with that, it will generally be about $10 an hour. In terms of what is being proposed for the number of chargers that would be required for new commercial or non-residential construction, anything under 10 spaces would not require them to have charging equipment. And then it has a gradation anywhere from 10 spaces on up to 200 spaces, as you can see here in the slide. Once you get over 200 spaces, 6% of the total spaces would be required to have the charging equipment. And so that's what we're proposing, is that as part of this ordinance, they would actually be required to install the equipment. One of the things the Green Building Code does not address is when there is a renovation or expansion of non-residential construction. What we're proposing as part of this ordinance is that they must install the EV charging equipment for any new spaces that would be required. So, for example, if you have a commercial shopping center that is adding on square footage, adding a new pad to the site, they would be required to install EV charging spaces at the ratio in the previous slide for only the new spaces. They wouldn't be required to go back and retrofit any existing spaces. For new multifamily residential construction, we are not actually proposing to require the installation of the equipment, but only that it be pre-wired. And the reason for that is that because individual residential owners may not have electrical vehicles, there isn't the need to put the equipment in until you have a demand for it. And so for that reason, we're only requiring that they be pre-wired. Where there are individual garages provided in the multifamily complex, they would be required to put one pre-wired space in. And then for the rest of the complex, if they just have surface parking or shade structures, 10% of those spaces would need to be pre-wired for EV charging spaces. Again, on the residential, it's really going to be based on the individual demand of the residents of the complex. For renovated multifamily, we're not requiring that they do any of the pre-wired spaces. Only where new units would be added would they then be required to do 10% of the spaces. So that concludes my presentation to you. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have on the proposed ordinance. Thank you.
Are there questions? Just a second. Are there questions for staff? Seeing that there are many questions for staff, I'm going to start with Commissioner Song.
Hello, Flynn. I believe that even though they're pre-wired, I believe the spaces have to be marked as EV charging station stalls. Is that correct?
No, the Green Building Code, I don't believe, requires them to be marked until the equipment is actually in place.
Okay, thank you. Then the second question is, I did not see that, except for the slide samples that you have, access to those charging poles. It's not, it doesn't have specifics when the space should be for handicapped people to charge their stations.
And so in terms...
Is that up to the designer?
I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt there. In terms of the provision of charging at handicap spaces, there is language in the Green Building Code relative to that. And so we would, again, default to the Green Building Code in terms of the number of spaces and the appropriate signage for that.
Okay. And then the last question is, because it's part of the Green Building Code, how have other cities have a different or lesser requirement in percentage?
In the statistics that I provided to you, or the summary of regulations from other cities, the majority of those were adopted prior to the adoption of the Green Building Code, from what I can see. For example, Pasadena has a standard which is far below what the Green Building Code now requires. The only one that I felt was comparable is the city of Santa Cruz. It looks like their ordinance was done about the same time that the Green Building Code was adopted, and so it does mirror the Green Building Code in terms of the number of spaces. What will happen is, for those cities that adopt the Green Building Code, they will need to update their ordinances accordingly. But from what I was able to pull from the web, it appears that a number of them have not done that yet.
Okay, and I lied. There one more question. Is there preference for those spaces to be within a certain distance of the entrance door, of the entry?
No, there isn't. There isn't any language in the Green Building Code about that. I've noticed other cities have some language about that, but I've omitted that from our ordinance. That's something we could add if the Planning Commission felt that were important.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lewin, you had your hand up, I believe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lynn, if you would just help me with a practical question. Not the last commission meeting, but the previous one, we looked at the addition of a drive-through Starbucks at the Albertson Center at Vista Chino. And that particular center has, I forget, 700, 800 parking spots. And there was a small addition, which was a 2-unit, a Starbucks and an undetermined unit with a drive-through. And they added about 4 parking spots that were probably unnecessary, but the tenant wanted it. Under this rule, would the property owner have to add 6% of the X% of the total number of spaces? Or what would have happened in that particular case, so that I can get a sense of how this rule will affect minor additions to existing properties, or or major renovations to existing properties? Can you answer that?
Certainly. Commissioner Lewin, that's a very good question to ask and a good example to select. In that particular instance, let's say that 4 new parking spaces were being added to the development. Based on the table that we have in the code, they would only be required to provide the EV charging spaces based on the number of new spaces being added. So on the table, if you have less than 10 spaces, you wouldn't be required to put any EV charging spaces in. So in that instance, they wouldn't be required to install one. If they had, let's say, 12 spaces that they were adding in addition to the other 800 that are in existence, we would only be looking at the 12 new spaces, and they would be required to add 1 EV charging station. So that's an example of what we would do for properties that are renovated or expanded.
Thank you. That was my number one concern, that large properties with a large amount of spots would not be retroactively prohibited from doing modifications. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Thank you, Planning Director, for this. I think it's something that will be a great asset to the city, being a plug-in user myself. And I had a question on single-family subdivisions, be it small lot subdivisions or normal lot subdivisions or large lot subdivisions. Is there a requirement for pre-wiring those units as well?
There is. I didn't add it to our zoning code, but because we have adopted the Green Building Code, single-family subdivisions would be required to pre-wire 1 space for each single-family unit.
And would that be true of a custom house as well, 1 house?
Correct.
And when you say pre-wire, when I was going through the process of establishing, my plug-in in my garage here, I had a 240-volt receptacle placed on the wall, and then from that I plugged in this actual thing I bought from Cripple Creek or whatever that place was. When you say pre-wire, will that receptacle be in place?
Yes, that's correct. That's the intent, is that the receptacle would be required, and then the property owner can install the little box and the cord that goes on the wall.
And then in terms of where there's a garage, say an underground garage, I know we don't have a lot of those, but we have carports, for instance, in some developments. Like I move into unit 43, but the wiring goes to unit 22. How do I get to take advantage of this code?
In terms of how that is worked out for each multifamily property, that's going to be up to either the developer or the manager of the apartment complex. What I would imagine is that the EV charging spaces would not be assigned to a specific unit, but rather as property owners request to have them, those spaces would be then designated to the property owner. In reviewing the information that's available from a number of the companies that make these charging units available for multifamily properties, what they do is that individual tenants can request to have the equipment installed, and then the tenant is billed for the electrical charges based on that unit's use. So there is a method to do that, but we have not specified that in our ordinance.
Okay, that's good. And then I guess my last question, although I think this is great, and I probably have a million questions, but I'll spare the commission. Tesla, don't they have a different plug thing that isn't compatible with everybody else's?
That is true. The Tesla connector is a little bit different, but Tesla owners have it's a little device that they can install on the end of their charger so that it will fit either Type 2 or standard Type 3 charging.
Oh, so it's an adapter.
Adapter, yeah.
And okay, so I guess my concern would be if a developer chose to only install the Tesla units, would there be some, I don't know, that just wouldn't seem fair to me because I have a Volt and I wouldn't be able to use it.
Yeah, good point. Because you can't really go the opposite direction. I don't know that there's an adapter for plug-in hybrids to go to the Type 3. At least I've not seen that yet. What we might want to do is add language that says that there shall be at least X% of the required chargers level 2 or something along those lines, if you'd prefer to do that.
Okay. It's just something I've thought about, like, because I've been in some upscale shopping centers where they don't care about my Volt, they just care about the Tesla users. I think that's the only question I have. I really thank you for doing this.
Commissioner Donenfeld, do you have questions?
No, I do not.
Commissioner Maruzzi, do you have questions?
I'm assuming the whole point of this is to address climate change. So I'm wondering, you said that as relates to multifamily residential, existing multifamily residential, in some cases, if the tenant or I guess condominiums, if they request to have a station installed, I would, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that why don't we have that as part of the ordinance, that if any tenant or owner in a multifamily property requests the installation of, I guess, the equipment necessary to charge your car, why don't we make that a requirement? In other words, the property owner can't say, no, we're not going to do that.
Certainly that is something that the Planning Commission could consider adding to this proposed ordinance. Again, we didn't really look at going back and retrofitting properties, but you make a good point. It's difficult for some owners of electric vehicles when they live in apartments, for example, or older condominium complexes, that it's not always easy to find means to charge your vehicle. So again, you could add that language should you choose to do so.
And the language would be that if a tenant requests the installation of the connection, I guess is the easiest way to put it, then the property owner would be required to allow that installation. Maybe the tenant has to pay for it, but they can't deny the request. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I think we might need to finesse that a little bit. And if that's the direction that the Planning Commission would like to go, what I might recommend is that we continue this to next month's meeting, so that way I can confer with our attorney in developing language that helps to address that situation.
Yeah, that is of concern to me because the vast majority of multifamily residential exists. I mean, it's the number of new apartment buildings being constructed in Palm Springs is fairly small. And I think there's a lot of people who live in apartment buildings and condominiums who would like to plug in an electric vehicle and not be told they cannot.
Yeah, so understood.
Commissioner Irvin, do you have questions? Your audio is off.
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Flynn, I just had a question. I heard you mention about cost, and you said you we're going to go into it a little bit later in the presentation. What is the cost that it's going to be?
So in terms of residential installation, let me start there first. The only cost that would typically apply to most homeowners is the cost of the little box that goes on your wall with the cord. I don't know the proper name for that. And typically those will run anywhere from about $400 to $600. And that's when you already have the outlet, the 240 volt outlet in the wall ready to go. For a commercial installation, the typical level 2 pedestal will cost between about $3,500 to $6,000 based on a report that I saw from the U.S. Department of Energy. And then for a level 3 pedestal charger, that cost goes up significantly, I believe, to about $10,000 to $15,000 for that. So for that reason, we're not putting any language about prohibiting property owners from charging. Because the costs of the pedestal equipment can be expensive, they are able to recoup that investment through the charges that they make for those people who plug into their equipment. Now, there are lease programs available. EVgo, ChargePoint, and the other major operators have leasing programs where there is a monthly cost for leasing the equipment, and then there's profit sharing in terms of the electrical charges. So if they buy the equipment, the prices that I quoted up front is typically what it costs, but there are leasing programs available that helps to minimize or eliminate that cost.
Okay, and one more kind of question too. I think I heard you say that there's no privileges that the stations will be able to get in the parking structure with handicap. Is that true?
Yes, there is a requirement in the Green Building Code that when you have EV charging spaces, there's a certain percentage that need to be made available for handicapped users as well.
I have a couple questions, Flynn, but I wanted to just, thank you for this. I have an electric vehicle, and the really big cost for me was bringing the 240 into my garage. Had it been pre-wired, it would have been less expensive to switch. But the one area that I wanted to look at on the new construction, but not the new construction, non-residential, but not the retrofit, is changing that standard to one space from 1 to 25. And part of the reason for that is many of the things that we look at are fairly small, and the amount of parking is not huge. And secondly, I think it would also hit gas stations, where I think it's important. There's no other way of having gas stations be required to put in a paid charging station, which I think would be really helpful to the public, except having a one for 1 to 25. But I wouldn't look at that necessarily for retrofits. And is that possible to go a little further than the green building standards? So it's a long question to get to where I want to go.
Madam Chair, yes, I think that would be appropriate in terms of the city's goals for sustainability, that rather than under 10 spaces not requiring any equipment, if you had the requirement for one for anywhere from 0 to 25 spaces, I think that would be appropriate and would not go significantly beyond what the Green Building Code requires. And your point is to only require that for new non-residential construction, but not the renovations or expansions?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I think with the renovations and expansions, we might be hitting 1 or 2 or 3 spaces. And that would be prohibitive. Commissioner Donenfeld, we still have to go to public hearings, so this should be questions. Commissioner Donenfeld?
Yes. Getting back to what you said, Chair Wormick, and referring to what Commissioner Lewin said, he was concerned about the pad that was being built out in front of Albertsons for Starbucks, and his concern was they wanted four spots. Now, let's say that was just a standalone Starbucks, and they only wanted 4 spots because they too were a part of a much larger parking complex. Would your requirement, bringing it down to 1, require them to install a charging unit?
I think that maybe that's an appropriate question when we get past the public hearing.
Oh, okay.
I think we still have to go to public hearing on this. Do we know if there are any members of the public who wish to speak?
No, there are not for this item.
So we can probably go from, and the city isn't making an additional presentation since you're the applicant. So if there are no members of the public that wish to speak, it's appropriate to close the public hearing. Flynn?
Yes, that's correct. You can go ahead and close the public hearing.
The public hearing is closed, and we're at the question that Commissioner Donenfeld asked. I'll try and answer it, but I might need help from Flynn. I would consider that a retrofit. And I think what Commissioner Lewin was worried about was having to go back and take all 600 spaces in the parking lot before Albertsons and require that they have 6% of the total spaces be chargers in that.
Well, my concern would be, let's put that one aside maybe, but what if a small business owner wants to build a standalone small business and the code only requires him to put in 5 or 6 spaces, and one of them would have to be perhaps a charging station? Well, that really takes a long time to charge that car. It would limit his ability to park other customers.
Maybe I'd refer to Flynn and ask you to see if that makes sense. I know that when I have gone to charge and I've been someplace, I only stay as long as I need to be there.
Oh, I can't. Well, you're a good citizen, Chair Wormick.
Flynn, do you want to opine on that?
Well, actually, Commissioner Song had a question.
Commissioner
or comment.
Song?
Yeah, perhaps this could help. This requirement is to pre-wire, and I believe that it's a conduit that goes and is plugged. The conduit is plugged so that when the owner is ready to install or the California green building standard is ready to make it into a requirement, then that's when they have to pull wire and install the expensive freestanding station. So in this case, if it is a Starbucks case or any other case in which they do have to do grading work and they do have to pull in power, they would have to add the conduit, but not the entire system. So the requirements are not as costly as we may think when the whole equipment is required to be installed.
My understanding is that for the commercial, it was that the equipment be installed. Am I correct, Flynn?
Yes, that is correct. For commercial, they would be required to install the number of chargers based on the number of spaces. Going back to Commissioner Donenfeld's concern, I believe, Chair Wermuck, you said that the requirement of providing one charger for anything less than 25 spaces would only apply to new construction and not to expansions. So in the Starbucks example on North Sunrise, that would be considered an expansion of an existing center, and it would not be required to install a charging station for the 4 spaces that they're adding.
I understand that when I was thinking of a standalone, unrelated structure that was being built on a small business scale, they would have to count based on their property. There would be nothing adjacent to count. So they might have 8 or 9 spaces. One of them would be taken up with the charger. And I wasn't necessarily thinking about the cost as much as I was thinking about people who find a charger. Maybe coming in from Palm Springs with a bunch of kids from God knows where, and they find, oh my, here's a charger. They just put it in. They have the lunch. They decide to go around the town, and then they come back and get their car. Now, I know this is a set of facts that are somewhat remote, but I don't want to, I'm not an electric car owner, but I absolutely respect that we have to make this much easier for people in terms of global warming remediation. But it just seems to me it's awfully strict. If this is the green building standard right now, why would we want to enhance it? That's pretty comprehensive, is it not?
Why don't I just withdraw my suggestion and keep it at 10 to 25? We've had a little bit of discussion. I'm trying to, Commissioner Lewin, just one second. I'm trying to remember the points. Commissioner Maruzzi wanted to add language that if a tenant or a tenant in an apartment building or an owner in a condominium would like to install a charger, the management company, the HOA, or the owner would have to allow that, but they could charge through both the cost and the monthly cost of electricity to the party. That was something I think pretty much everybody agreed with.
Yes.
And was there anything else that got raised that had unanimous approval? I don't believe so. Am I correct? Commissioner Lewin?
I just wanted to say that I think that Commissioner Maruzzi's intent is excellent. I also know that Commissioner Hirschbein raised an issue of level 3, 440 chargers versus 220. But I think today, if we adopt this, if we recommend this, we are doing something tremendous, something that 10 years ago nobody thought would be possible, which is really mandating the accessibility of level 2 charging on all new construction and major reconstruction. And that moves the ball so far forward that if we try and become perfect in all things, we might create unintended consequences. I would really like us to support the existing staff recommendation as it's written, and let's see how it plays out for the next 12 to 18 months. Because I was there 12 years ago when we were dreaming that one day we would get charging stations. And I was there when Michelle Mycian got the first grants to build the first few. And now we're thinking about making it mandatory for all new construction. And it's a tremendous leap forward. And if we over-regulate today, we might have an unintended consequence and an industry backlash or a community backlash, whereas this really moves the ball very, very far forward. So if my fellow commissioners want to add a bunch of other things, I'll probably support it, but I really like the way it's written today, and I think it achieves so much public good.
We're not quite at a motion. So I'd rather have a response to that before we get to a motion. I think Commissioner Maruzzi wanted to respond directly to that.
I greatly appreciate what Commissioner Lewin is saying. I mean, he was around when this was just a dream. But I don't think we should stop now if there's an opportunity to. I don't think what we're asking or what I'm asking is all that onerous. It seems inappropriate that if someone is living in an apartment and they buy an electric car and they're willing to pay the cost for the installation of, let's say, 120 as opposed to 240, what's the issue with having it required that the property owner can't say, well, no, I'm sorry, you can't have that?
Commissioner Donenfeld had his hand up before, but should we have Commissioner Lewin answer that before? Doug, are you okay with?
Sure.
Commissioner Lewin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and respectfully to Commissioner Maruzzi, I really agree with you, but there are all kinds of housing situations where there are unassigned parking spots in multifamily units, and so I agree with you, I would like for that to happen, but I don't think we really fully understand the implications of mandating that the property owner allow it when you have a situation where there are 120 units and there are 95 parking spaces and none of them are assigned, and then one person says, I want it, and his unit is 450 feet away from the parking spot, or maybe they use it to grab the prime parking spot because they're more affluent than their neighbors. I think you're totally right, but I think that's why Director Flynn Fagg said if we want to do that, we would need to table it to the next meeting to look at the other pieces of this.
Commissioner Donenfeld, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, Paul makes perfect sense to me. When you get existing multi-family residences, these are older buildings that have been laid out in certain ways, and we don't know what the unintended consequences are going to be with respect to the kind of havoc we'll rate both among the HOA members, the owner. I think this is a major step forward, and we're taking a leadership position on this. And I think we need to get people used to this before we take it any further. So I'm very pleased with what staff has done. I would support Paul.
I just wanted to speak to that issue and maybe tell you a story. My niece bought a condo. She has an assigned parking spot. She wanted to buy an electric vehicle. At the point in time that she was buying a vehicle, they were not allowing her to put in the electrical. So she bought a Prius instead. 6 months later, they changed management and they opened it up to electric vehicles and allowed that to happen. So people are making car buying decisions based on whether or not they can have an electric vehicle. I'm sympathetic to not adding extra to it, but possibly where there are assigned spaces and the tenant has an assigned space, we could consider doing that. Commissioner Maruzzi, you had your hand up.
I'm sure I'm not the first person to raise this in the United States. There certainly must be some municipality who has thought this through and hopefully dealt with the unintended consequences. And there is language that we could consider, if not at this meeting, perhaps we could readdress, we could approve this, and then 6 months from now, we could address other opportunities based on what was learned about these types of situations by staff, and consider what I'm suggesting at that time.
Commissioner Hirschbein.
So I support the notion of retrofitting, allowing a tenant or an owner of a condo to retrofit. And I'll give you one point, and that is that there was a time where if you were a condo owner in a multifamily building and you had a roof above you, the HOA could deny your request to install solar panels. And it prevented a lot of people from installing solar panels. And the argument was, oh, it's a common area roof, and we don't know if you damage the roof. You know, there's a lot of arguments against it, and it held that for a while. But more recently, I think a law was passed that prohibits you from prohibiting the installation of solar panels on a common area roof, or for aesthetic reasons, not a common area roof, but your own roof. So now everybody can do it within whatever HOA rules are promulgated, and no one's died because of that. It's just moved forward. It's like the next generation. I would agree with Flynn that maybe he needs to look at some language. We don't know what the language is. We're kind of layman at this. But as far as policy goes, I would fully support Commissioner Maruzzi's notion that it be required to allow it. And the cost burden is by the residents. So I would vote for a resolution that directs Flynn to come back with some language at the next meeting to complete the process.
Madam Chair, your microphone is off.
I think I would entertain a motion one way or the other, and we can vote on it.
I would like, I think we should continue it, because I think you're going to have a constituency in the city, namely developers and existing property owners who own some older buildings, who this wasn't noticed up. So I think we ought to give that industry a chance to weigh in on how they would feel at it. So if it's added by Flynn in new text, it could be part of our next meeting, and then a wider community of interest could show up perhaps and give us their feelings about it.
Why don't I do this two ways? What I'd like to do, we're not taking a vote on this, correct, Flynn?
You could take a vote on this evening. I think you have a couple of options, though. One of the suggestions was to go ahead and approve it as written and then come back after several months with a report on the effectiveness of the ordinance, and at that point in time, add language relative to retrofitting multifamily properties, making it available. Or the other option is you could continue it to your next meeting. I'll come up with the language for multifamily properties at that point in time. So either one, I think, would be appropriate for you to consider.
What I was thinking was we look first at a motion of support for what Flynn has done. I think there's a general agreement that it's good and we want to move it forward, and then look at whether or not we want to include this language now or later.
So it would be two motions? Is that what you're suggesting?
I just wanted a verbal motion, maybe just a sense of the group that we approve what Flynn has currently done. Why don't we do that just as a sense of the group? Is there anybody who disagrees with what Flynn has done? Okay, so we know that. So I'll take a motion one way or the other, and we can vote it up or down. Commissioner Lewin.
I'd like a motion to approve the staff recommendation for item 2C with the condition that we revisit this in 6 months to discuss the issue of retrofitting multifamily housing and other ways to expand the ordinance in the future, which Commissioner Maruzzi, I believe, encompasses what you wanted to achieve.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Donenfeld?
Yes.
Commissioner Ervin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Yes.
Commissioner Lewin?
Yes.
Commissioner Song?
Yes.
Vice Chair Maruzzi?
Yes.
Chair Wormick?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Fine. Great. Moving right along. The next item is new business. It is not a public hearing item. Item 4A, Toll Brothers for a sign district application to install 2 permanent entry signs, 28 temporary signs, and 6 temporary flagpole signs within the Cody Place development located at 900 South Palm Canyon Drive. Staff report, please.
Hello, good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. The applicant is requesting approval of a sign district program that includes 2 permanent monument signs, 28 temporary signs, and 6 temporary flagpole signs within the Cody Place community that is located at 900 South Palm Canyon Drive. The 2 monument signs will be the only permanent signs as part of this sign district. The first monument sign will be located at the main entrance along Cameron Center Drive and South Palm Canyon Drive in the landscaped medium. This monument sign will be 38 square feet and will be double-sided or double-faced. The second monument sign will be located at the South Palm Canyon Drive and Mesquite Avenue corner. This monument sign was originally placed at the entrance of Mesquite Avenue. However, the applicant has moved it to the corner to allow for better visibility to the community. These monument signs are made from aluminum with a white, smooth stucco finish and internal illuminated reverse halo lit channel letters on both monument signs. The applicant is also proposing 3 community identification signs. One of those signs will be located on the northern portion of the community and 2 along the southern portion. These community identification signs advertise 2 to 3 story luxury townhomes, square footage information, and the website to find out some more information on the Cody Place development community. Originally, the applicant had proposed 10 flagpole signs to line South Palm Canyon Drive and Mesquite Avenue. Staff's recommended to change that number from 10 to 6 and center those flagpole signs along the main entrance at Cameron Center Drive, similar to what we've done in the past for similar community developments. 2 kiosk signs will be located at the main entrance as well. These kiosk signs act as directional signs and point to the different amenities within Cody Place. The interior signage is made up of several different signs, all ranging around the same size, 4.25 square feet, and they indicate the locations of these amenities, such as the Bark Park, the Sales Center, the Recreation Center, building and lot numbers, and model homes. These signs, again, are temporary and will not be visible from the public right away once townhomes are under construction. 4 model home signs will be placed immediately adjacent to the townhome model homes. These model homes signs will indicate the name, number of beds and baths, square footage information for that specific townhouse. Accompanying those model home signs will be smaller signs, 5 inches by 6 inches, that state the name of the model home and square footage information. These 4 smaller signs are typically found right outside the main entrance of the model home. Due to the characteristics of the property, the curvature along South Palm Canyon Drive, the inability to place signs along the northern part of the site because of Tockwitz Creek, and the fact that once development begins, all but 3 signs will be hidden from the public right-of-way, staff has determined the temporary nature of these signs are compliant with the purpose of a sign district. Additionally, the proposed permanent signage is consistent with one another. They stick to a common design theme, and they comply with the Palm Springs zoning code. Staff recommends the Planning Commission approve subject to the following conditions: reducing the number of flagpole signs from 10 to 6, allowing the flagpole signs only at the main entrance off South Palm Canyon Drive and Cameron Center Drive, and relocating all 3 commercial identification signs to the front of the fence, the existing perimeter fence on the ground as shown in the site plan. That concludes my report, and the applicant is available for questions.
Thank you. Let me see if there are any questions from the commission. If there are none, I'm going to make a motion to approve this. Are there any questions? I see no hands raised. I'm going to make a motion.
What about comments?
Comments would be fine if you have comments or questions.
I have a comment. I just went and looked at Vibe right before the meeting, and they only have 1 sign on Baristo. They don't have any signs on Farrell, and they don't have any signs on Tockwitz. And I think it's kind of overkill what we're going to be seeing from the public right away. I don't care about any internal signs. I think those are up to the developer and they're tasteful. But I think with the flag signs, the banner flags, and the monument signs, and then you add those what is he calling them? The kicker signs. I think it's overkill. I don't think he needs it. I think people driving by this are going to see what's there, and that's the philosophy of Vibe. They're doing just fine, and I just think it's overkill with the signage.
Commissioner Donenfeld.
We are entering an economy and a real estate sales market that we will know nothing about. I say give the developer, within reason, all he thinks he needs to bring people to this site. And when you drive down past the site, traffic picks up measurably at that point, and you're not going to be noticing a lot. I think as much public exposure as you have to the fact that these wonderful units are being sold, and it's only temporary, it's not going to be there forever, I say let's, within reason, and I think the flagpole limitation makes some sense, let's give the developer what he thinks he needs to sell these houses.
Commissioner Lewin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've wrestled a lot with this one, and probably those of you that know me maybe not really realize where I come from on this one. I think that the 2 monument signs create enormous visibility. The sheer amount of traffic that runs up Palm Canyon Drive, the fact that there's one at the corner and another one at the entrance is incredible visibility. And the fact that it complies with the sign program means that I'm going to support those. You know, what I'm worried about are the flagpoles. And I think the AAC got it right when I read the staff report in their initial review. When the AAC said no flagpoles at all, I think they were right, and here's why. And Doug, it's partially because of the economy. It might take 10 years to sell all of these units, and to have even half a dozen 6 21-foot flagpoles sitting there for an unknown period of time, I think it'll be a mistake, and I think there is enough visibility with just those just those monument signs, I would hope that the commission would follow the AAC's recommendation and eliminate the flagpoles altogether, or if we have to have flagpoles, maybe just accept the 2 deep interior ones. But if we have to drive by for 10 years every day looking at 21-foot flagpoles, I think we're going to realize we made a mistake on this one. But I would really be supportive of not allowing any flagpoles, but allowing the rest of the sign program, all of it to go through.
Commissioner Donenfeld?
Oh, I usually respect you on most issues, but on this one, I have to disagree. First of all, the monument signs don't tell you anything's for sale. A monument sign is forever. That tells you that there's a wonderful residence called Cody Place, but it doesn't tell you what's going on in there. And people are, there's got to be a reason why there are flagpoles in every development practically. There has to be a reason why those horrible inflatable guys that go up and down on a car lot are there. It's not because they look good. People are attracted to them. They must work. And so I'm not, if it takes 10 years to sell it, it takes 10 years to sell it. I don't think, I would want to make sure that the flagpoles don't get raggedy and that they're replaced and they're kept up. But I think a few flagpoles is not going to ruin our aesthetic experience in Palm Springs.
Commissioner Irvin.
I stopped by the location today too, and I noticed it's kind of a little bit of a setback. So the palm trees that are lined up along Palm Canyon, they're kind of almost blinding anything that you possibly can be able to see, because they're lined up all the way down the road, so you wouldn't be able to see the 6 flagpoles. So I don't think that the flagpoles will make that much of a difference.
I hadn't intended to, but speaking to Commissioner Lewin's point, Ascena sold 440 units without a single exterior sign. I think they have 4 monument signs because it's a fairly large area, and the sales come through realtors. They actually don't come through the signage.
But Kathy, the Ascena is really pushed back. If you will go down Vistacino or Ginatri, you hardly see a home. So if you're going to put flags there, it means really no one can see them. But we're right on the streets, so people will see those flags.
Well, if you look at Vibe, they don't have any flagpoles.
Vibe is working in a different market, Michael. We're now we're going into a much different market.
Well, they didn't feel necessary to add any flags.
Well, they had a huge market. They had a huge economy to be selling homes, and homes are selling at a dime a dozen in Palm Springs.
Why don't we, we're having an interesting debate. Can I hear from the 2 people who haven't entered into this? Commissioner Song first.
I had a motion to assess the project with the reduction of the flagpoles and be able to, the speed of South Palm Canyon is the speed of South Palm Canyon. And what you guys are going to be, what the public is going to be experiencing is these flagpoles sort of further down in the entry driveway. So they're not all facing, or they're not all on South Palm Canyon. So architecturally, I think there's a balance between market and design, and what the staff has put together, and reductions. I think it's a good balance.
Commissioner Marucci, do you have comments?
I do. I live on San Lorenzo Road that goes right into this property. And we've had our house since 1998, and that has been a blight forever. And the fact that the Toll Brothers actually came in and had the resources to build is remarkable. And anything that can be done to help sell those properties, and if they believe that the flags are going to help, I would be glad to see them every time I drive by, because anything we can do to finish that project, I support.
I would take a motion at this point from Commissioner Song, and we'll see which way this goes.
I make a motion to approve the project as proposed by the planning staff.
Is there a second?
Second?
Who seconded it?
Doug?
Okay. Can we have roll call on this, please?
Commissioner Donenfeld?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
No.
Commissioner Lewin?
No.
Commissioner Song?
Yes.
Vice Chair Maruzzi?
Yes.
Chair Wormick?
Yes.
Motion approved 5-2.
Thank you. Okay, and that was one I thought would go very quickly. It didn't. 4B, and I'm not going to pronounce this very well. Giampiero, thank you. And Sue Campelli, owners for a major architectural review for the construction of a 3,876 square foot single-family home located on a hillside lot located at 2381 Vista Palazzo, Drive, which is in the Pacific Palisades Specific Plan. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you mentioned, this project is in the Desert Palisades, which is a specific plan area that has specific and guidelines that are used to evaluate the project. So the slide that is before you shows the location of the property. It is right as you come into the Desert Palisades off of the gatehouse. It's lot 43. Currently, there are other houses that are built within the development, but they're farther set up into the hillside itself. So the property it faces Vista Palizada Drive. It is front-loaded, meaning that the pool is in the front of the house with a driveway that comes off of the street into a garage that's attached. There are 3D renderings showing the design of the house. When the AAC reviewed this project on April 20th, they made several recommendations, and I'll go through of them quickly and then respond by the architect how they corrected them. So they wanted the chimney caps and other features to be not visible from the street. The chimneys had protruded above the roof line, and they have since lowered them. The plans also needed to reflect a proper decking material that was used in the front of the property. You'll see that the house is located 7 feet above the street, and there's a step down, about a 2-foot step down onto the deck. Originally, this was a wood decking, and the architect has changed it to a concrete decking. Originally, his plans had a pool vault that was underneath this pool decking. They have since moved it, and it is now on the south property line. The AC also wanted to know the wall material that is around the trash area. This is going to be a poured concrete wall that will shield the trash area, which is behind the garage, and I can show that on a site plan. The material board that's they're proposed includes the colors. They now show a beige color as the house material on the main portion of the house. And then they wanted a wall that is underneath the decking. So the deck sits on piers that run along the front of the street. And the original 3D rendering did not show a wall that hid these piers, so you would see underneath it. So as I mentioned, the house has a floor plan of a great room, kitchen, and then 3 bedrooms with a garage. The design guidelines that are in the packet are extensive for Desert Palisades, and I won't go through all of them, but I will talk about mass and scale. So the house is a height of 18 feet as measured from the street. It consists of a series of horizontal planes, and there's an upper clear story window. It's modern design, modern inspired with a single continuous horizontal low plane. The material board is being shown now, showing the colors that they're proposing, a lot of Ipe wood and aluminum frame for the windows. The landscape plan uses minimal desert landscaping that meets the design guidelines for desert palisades. The driveway will be 12 feet wide at the street and will be use of pavers. They're also proposing a trellis canopy that is sort of an architectural feature that sits at the front of the garage that will also shield the garage doors from the street. There's a material board showing the hardware as to the fire pits and the different Core-10 steel elements that will be used throughout the building. And then there's also the fencing around the pool, which is a cable guardrail system. Because the pool is front-loaded, the AAC was very keen on making sure that this was an attractive portion of the house. And there is a snapshot of what it looks like, the proposed guardrail guide and wire guides. There are photographs of what the site looks like now. As you can see, it's rock strewn and there will be no mass grading. The house will be placed on top of the land and meet all the standards for the design guidelines. So, Chair, that concludes my report, and as you heard earlier, the architect is available to be called if needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? There are none. Does anybody want to call the architect? Seeing no one who wants to call the architect, does anyone want to give a sense of this, or can I get a motion? Commissioner Lewin.
I'll move approval of the item as proposed by staff.
Is there?
And I'll second.
Can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Donenfeld?
Yes.
Commissioner Donenfeld, can I get your vote?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Yes.
Commissioner Lewin?
Yes.
Commissioner Song?
Yes.
Vice Chair Maruzzi?
Yes.
Chair Wormick?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. And congratulations to the applicant. The last item is a discussion item. It's a discussion of the establishment of a food desert overlay zone. Can we get a staff report, please?
Madam Chair and members of the Commission, this evening we have a discussion relative to the concept of food deserts. In recent discussions of the City Council Business Retention Committee and even here at the Planning Commission, we have talked about the need for grocery stores in certain neighborhoods. The term food desert is described as an area where residents have limited access to healthy and affordable food. There are a number of indicators that the U.S. Department of Agriculture has established in terms of defining a food desert. That includes distance from a grocery store, the individual resources of residents within that area relative to income or access to a vehicle in order to get to a grocery store. And then finally, there are also neighborhood indicators looking at the overall median income of the neighborhood or access to public transit. What the USDA has stated is that food access becomes critical primarily in neighborhoods where there is higher poverty and a lower median income. One of the questions arises, why should we as the city care about food deserts, or why should we as planners and public officials care about food deserts? The reason is because planning policy shapes the way our communities grow and develop. We make policy decisions on a regular basis that impact public health. For example, access to clean water, clean air. Do we provide parks in neighborhoods, which gives access to recreational opportunities for residents? And so similarly, access to healthy food is another thing that impacts public health. As we've particularly found during the pandemic, we need to have certain needs met on a regular basis, and by having those needs close to our neighborhoods, it makes it more feasible for us to meet those needs. In looking at the city, I had my staff do a mapping exercise looking at the factors of distance, poverty level, and income. And what it revealed, just here looking at the map, based on distance from existing grocery stores, there are 3 areas which could be considered as food deserts. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip through this portion of the presentation and just state that there are a number of census tracts, primarily on the northern end of town, Census Tract 446.05 and 446.06, that based on distance from a grocery store, median income, and percentage of poverty levels, those areas could be defined as a food desert. The areas in Area 2 or Area 3, what we find is that the median income or the poverty level aren't really close enough to what the USDA defines as meeting that definition of a food desert. The next question comes up, if we were to proceed with this, what would be the qualifications? I would recommend that we stick fairly closely to what the USDA uses to define as a food desert, that it would be an area that's 1 mile or more from a grocery store, census tract poverty level greater than 20%, and the median income is less than the overall city median income. The next question becomes, what constitutes a qualifying grocery store? And here's what I would recommend. The staff report goes into greater detail in terms of the different types of grocery stores, but I would recommend that we establish a minimum square footage of 5,000 square feet, that they also contain the following, that there is a full provision of perishable items, including meat products, dairy products, fresh fruits and vegetables, that they also have a full line of dry groceries. Those would be things such as baking ingredients, flour, sugar, etc. And then they also have a full line of canned goods as well. What I would recommend that we exclude from a qualifying grocery store is convenience stores. They typically don't offer the expanded level of perishables, dry groceries, and canned goods that are necessary for daily life. And then drugstores, even though they do include some food items, they typically don't have the full extent that's necessary. The last part of this discussion is what should be the zoning incentives to encourage grocery stores to establish themselves in the areas where they currently are not. One of the key things that we hear from applicants over again is that shortening the entitlement process is one of the ways that we can encourage those types of uses that we want in neighborhoods. Another thing that we could look at is to allow waivers of certain development standards, for example, parking requirements for a grocery store, or height and setback requirements, where they may need a little bit of wiggle room in terms of putting a standard footprint on a site. Another thing that we could look at is to eliminate the need for any associated applications. A couple of the things that we see many times with grocery stores is the sales of liquor, which requires a separate conditional use permit. Another thing that we're seeing with grocery stores, for example, our Vons on East Palm Canyon has a gas station, which also requires a conditional use permit. And so as part of an overlay, what we might do to look for incentives is eliminating the need for associated applications. So what I'm proposing is to get your input tonight on the proposed definition of what a food desert is for an overlay. Also looking at zoning incentives, what you might recommend, with the idea that I would come back next month with an ordinance incorporating those items for you to review and discuss at your June meeting. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have on this proposal. Thank you.
Any questions for the Director, Commissioner Maruzzi?
The property at Racket Club and North Palm Canyon that we looked at recently, would the overlay zone, is that included in that overlay zone, that location?
Yeah, based on our definition, it's more than a mile away from an existing grocery store, and then the census tract in which it's located would meet the qualifications. However, the proposal that we considered wouldn't meet the qualifications for a qualifying grocery store, but that site would, yes.
But the parcel's large enough that it could accommodate. I think there was once a
Yes,
supermarket there.
that's correct.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Song.
Flynn, can we also consider incentives for the overlay ordinance when it comes to existing building versus brand new construction? Perhaps we can be more lenient when the developer wants to use existing buildings so that they can get their business faster, and then therefore use some of our empty commercial buildings.
Yes, absolutely. We can consider that as one of the incentives. What we might be able to do is where there's an existing building, we might be able to eliminate one of the applications in the review process, like the major architectural application, and we can have it be more of an administrative process.
Thank you.
Other questions? I don't see any hands. Oh, Commissioner Maruzzi.
When we approved grocery outlet, which was an existing building, but it doesn't, that location doesn't fit within the overlay of any area that we're discussing here, correct?
It would have before it was established, because that particular area of town used to be more than a mile away from a grocery store, a qualifying grocery store. But the establishment of grocery outlet in and of itself, there's no longer a food desert there.
But, okay, so had they not been there and decided they wanted to move into that space, then Commissioner Song's suggestion would make sense.
Yeah, that would have been a good one. That would have been a good site.
Commissioner Donenfeld.
You know, very often the incentives have to do with governmental monetary incentives, tax credits, rebates, cutting out the administrative and bureaucratic expenses for approval. But with the budget that we're facing coming this year and next, it's going to be very hard to come up with some meaningful incentives for developers when we have no money to give away as incentives. So it would have to be sort of non-monetary type incentives, it seems to me.
Commissioner Donenfeld, I think we don't have purview over monetary incentives.
No, you're right. You're right. But I can't think of, from a planning perspective, unless it's something to do with the expedition of the planning process, it's hard for me to think of things that are planning based that would work as meaningful incentives.
Parking and setback.
Well, that's a thought.
The other one is building envelope. The grocery stores especially tend to have a set footprint that they want to put in, or maybe a set of footprints. So having some flexibility to allow them to use what they normally use so they don't have to redesign. And that's building, that's height, that's parking, that's setback. It may be facade.
Perhaps we could look at other jurisdictions and see how they treat these large big box sort of grocery stores or any types of grocery stores from a planning perspective. I don't know if that makes any sense, but maybe we're unduly restrictive with respect to some of our requirements that we can be a little bit more forgiving about.
Well,
Madam Chair, Commissioner Lewin has a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Commissioner Lewin?
Pardon me. Actually, it was a point of order. I was not sure if we are only asking questions of Director Fagg or if we're beginning discussion among ourselves.
Beginning to go to discussion, so please feel free to discuss.
Okay, thank you. Then I think that the director of our planning department has done a terrific job in identifying the criteria for a food desert and making great recommendations. And I would love to see the proposed overlay ordinance come forward based on the definitions that he currently is using. But there was one part of this staff report that I probably wouldn't support in the future, and I wanted to get the input of my fellow commissioners on this topic. And it's on page 5, and it is the third bullet point under kind of zoning incentives. And Doug, you're right. We're not here to do cash incentives. This is all about zoning. The third bullet point on page 5 says, eliminate the need for additional application types, such as eliminating CUPs for grocery stores that include a gas station. And I think that goes a little too far. If our objective is to provide food in an area that doesn't have food, we should try and achieve that objective. But the moment you're adding in a gas station, if the entity has the resources to build a gas station, then they have the resources to pay the CUP fee and to bring it forward for us as commissioners to evaluate whether a gas station is really the right thing to have in that particular location and neighborhood. So here we are, we're giving direction to staff, and I really want to hear from the rest of you whether you would want to waive the right to review gas stations, knowing that they often come with car washes and automotive services and stacks of tires. If we want to waive that right and have a gas station go through administratively, whereas I think we would want to see lower barriers for food as described by Flynn in this. So I'm curious to know what the rest of you think.
What I would like to do is maybe take each item separately and have comments on it. The first was the criteria for a food desert. Were there any comments about that, or did we agree with what Flynn put forward?
I agree. I think it's great.
So I'm basically seeing agreement on that. So then the second is the incentives. And I believe Flynn listed 3 of them. We can take why don't we go backwards on that? Commissioner Lewin wanted to talk about eliminating CUPs for gas stations and or liquor. Is that an incentive people would want to agree to? Commissioner Hirschbein.
Planning Director, is it the CUP process that's burdensome or the cost of the CUP?
It's a combination of both of those items. It lengthens the entitlement process, and then there's the additional cost of the applications themselves.
Well, one thought would be to waive the fee for the CUP if we do want to review it, or we could direct staff to review it. I trust that they're qualified to determine whether a use such as a gas station, how it's oriented on the site is compatible with adjacencies. I'm not that fussed about it, so that's how I feel about it.
Can I hear from the rest of the commission? Commissioner Irvin?
I personally think the way that it's set up is just fine to me. I don't feel like there's anything else needs to be added.
But would you eliminate a CUP for a separate approval for a gas station or a liquor store?
No, I wouldn't.
So we've got two people feeling like they wouldn't. Commissioner Song?
I agree with Commissioner Hirschwein that the staff will be equipped, and it's in the spirit of trying to get a grocery store, and if it means that they come with a gas station in order to supply that grocery store and be able to reduce trips to stores because now you have a closer, it will make it more palatable for the developer to come in, and the staff will be equipped just even by how they have reviewed the last project. So I'm confident on the staff evaluation. So I would support eliminating the CUP.
Can I hear from, I've got two other commissioners I haven't heard from. Commissioner Maruzzi?
Yeah, I would like to ask the planning director what he believes about this. I mean, it's in here for a reason, and I'd like to know if he, what his feelings are about this bullet point.
In terms of the proposal to eliminate the conditional use permits for accessory uses, the primary reason I included that is oftentimes those accessory uses help to drive sales at the grocery store. You'll see the major chains such as Vons and Albertsons, Kroger, and the others who are using both liquor and gas stations to help fuel sales, if you will, for lack of a better term. And so for those reasons, I included that. Again, we don't have many incentives to offer. As Commissioner Donenfeld has pointed out, we really don't have any financial incentives we can offer. And so we have to look at the things that we can do from a zoning standpoint. I also think that the comments about looking at adjacencies in terms of will the gas station or the liquor sales impact an adjacent property, I think that's important. And so we should still include that as an evaluation as part of the Planning Commission consideration of the item. But I don't think we need to have them necessarily file a separate conditional use permit application for those accessory uses.
Commissioner Donenfeld, did you have comments on this?
I think I understand what Paul is saying, but Flynn just said to encourage a large grocery store to locate in one of these underserved areas, they very often need, or part of the business model includes, a gas station or an ancillary facility of some type. It would be easier on them if they could put that in one package and not have to go, if we said, no, we're going to really streamline the planning process and approval process with respect to the grocery store. We at the same time would want to probably eliminate the CUP requirement for the ancillary facilities that would make it more economically incentivizable to be there.
Commissioner Lewin, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a comment to the commission and also a question for Flynn, and maybe a little understanding on my part. And because we're just here talking and Flynn's going to go and do all this work and come back with an overlay and a whole thing for us to actually vote on. This is just a wonderful discussion right now. And we're not going to decide anything tonight. So I have no problem if we go forward and we include the waiver of the CUPs in the next part, knowing that we're going to debate the merits of that. But I really want to understand something here. Flynn, in what you're envisioning, could somebody build a 5,000 square foot BevMo and attach to it a gas station, include some food with the BevMo, some dried goods, some perishable goods, but basically be a large liquor store, have a gas station and a car wash along North Indian Canyon, and go through administratively because we took away all the CUPs and there was never a chance for the citizens to come and have a public hearing and say, hey, we think that's not right for us. Would that happen under this? Is that a possibility under what you're envisioning?
No, I don't think that's the direction that we want to go in terms of incentives. Number one, relative to the car wash, I would not include that as an incentive, and it's not something that we're seeing the major chains doing. They typically have a standalone gas station, but they don't do car washes, and I think we should exclude that from any incentive because that's not where we want to go. Secondly, relative to, could it be a BevMo? The answer is no. It needs to be a grocery store, and so the primary sales need to be food items and not alcohol items. So the way that we establish that definition can help to eliminate that concern. The third thing is I agree that there needs to be the ability for residents to comment on an application. What I will probably propose to you when we develop the ordinance is even though we're looking at a reduced entitlement timeframe, I would still recommend that we have some type of review at the Planning Commission, which would give members of the public the opportunity to comment. What we will look at doing is having an accelerated time frame for getting that before the Planning Commission, but still having a public meeting where people could comment.
Commissioner Donenfeld?
We haven't done this in quite a while, and a number of us, and I know by suggesting this, I'm going to be drafted too, but it seems to me that this calls for a little subcommittee to work some of these things through because we don't have any hanging around anymore, and some of us certainly have a lot of time on our hands. Mr. Lewin doesn't because he's a working stiff, but some of us who do, we might want to spend some time with Flynn. It's important. I think this is a wonderful concept to be getting into and good for the Planning Commission, but I think it's going to take some time to work through.
Let me just say at this point, right now your comments are out of order because I want to go through the topics and I'll come back to that later. Flynn, do you have enough direction on this?
I believe that I do. I've heard the concerns that have been offered by the planning commissioners, in particular, Mr. Lewin, relative to things that really are not the goal of what we're trying to do. And so we can craft an ordinance that helps to address those. So yes, I do believe I have enough to go on. Thank you.
The only question I would throw on this particular topic is on the liquor license. If there's bad behavior, is it revocable?
Let me look into that. That's a good question, and I think that's something that we need to address, that we still need to have that opportunity to revoke something should they not be adhering to what they need to do relative to their liquor license. So yes, that's a good comment.
And going now to the streamlined process, what did you envision in the streamlined process? Are you envisioning a planning commission application but not going through AAC?
That is really about the only thing that will function in terms of a reduced time frame. If we can eliminate the AAC review, that makes it much quicker in terms of the process. And so that's what I will probably bring forward to you, is that we only go to the Planning Commission.
Are there any concerns here about that in terms of reducing the process in that way?
Well, I kind of have a concern. I don't know if it's an overriding concern, but I have a concern about it. I mean, if our food deserts are in demographic zones or demographic areas that are lower poverty or higher poverty, lower median income, are we saying those people don't deserve to have their commercial buildings vetted for aesthetic issues? I mean, you're kind of, you're treading, like it's a mixed signal, like you're saying, well, you don't deserve to have your buildings look good.
Does anybody want to respond to that? Commissioner Lewin.
I think Commissioner Hirschbein brings up a good point, but I think that Flynn will listen and come back with a solution that includes that the Planning Commission would also look at aesthetics perhaps in a food overlay. So it's one public hearing instead of multiple sets. I agree with you, Michael. I agree with you that we shouldn't waive beauty and amenities, but I think Flynn has got the right heart and the right vision, and I would just like to know which CUPs would be waived and which would not. I think that would be the key thing.
In terms, I hear those issues, although I have yet to see a beautiful grocery store.
You're absolutely correct.
In any demographic area. The other one was the waiver of certain standards. And I think there are two things that would go to. One is to make it easier, and the other is to allow the grocery store to use what is a more standard footprint so that they don't have to spend money on redesign. Are there any concerns about Flynn setting up some standards that can be waived? And Flynn, what did you have in mind in this?
I think the things that we've already talked about in terms of being able to reduce parking standards to a certain degree, being able to reduce setbacks and height limits when there is no impact to adjacent properties, those are the types of things that I would look at. Perhaps lot coverage and allowing an increase, a slight increase in lot coverage. Again, those are the things that I would look at in terms of waivers of development standards.
Would you waive the requirement for an electric vehicle charging station?
No.
Okay. Does anybody have any concerns about this? I don't see any. Commissioner Song, yes.
Well, this would be the area that also could be the classification between what would be the incentives for an existing building and a brand new development. So it could be further broken down and then more favorable in using empty or vacant buildings.
With this, does anybody have more comments to give to Flynn, or Flynn, do you need any more direction? Commissioner Irvin.
I just want to tell Flynn thank you, and you're doing a great job. I know we had a discussion last time kind of about this, and I just wanted to just tell him thank you and I appreciate the fast turnaround and paying attention to getting us a grocery store out there in that area.
Anyone else? Flynn, we don't need to take a vote on this, correct?
No, you don't need to take a vote on it. The final thing is, would you like to put together a small subcommittee to work with me in actually developing the ordinance? We would need to meet via Zoom or some other type of video conferencing, but that's certainly something that we could do.
Would it be helpful to you?
Always helpful to bounce ideas off the commissioners.
Are there parties that would like to do this? Commissioner Donenfeld. Commissioner Irvin. We can go to 3 members. Commissioner Song. You've got it.
So noted. Thank you.
Thank you for volunteering. Okay, we finished with this. We've got Planning Commission reports, requests, and comments. Are there any from our commissioners? Commissioner Donenfeld.
I have a question for Flynn, and that is, Flynn, I'm scheduled to do the May AAC meeting, and my calendar tells me it's coming up, I think, on this Monday. Is it still meeting?
Yes, we are doing the AAC meeting on Monday, and we'll need to bring you in via Zoom for that meeting.
Okay, and you'll send me the proper notice and all that.
Yes, we will do that.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Planning Commission Director's report.
I don't have any items to report for you at this point in time, other than our next meeting is going to be on June the 10th. We will continue to do the meeting via Zoom for that. Other than that, you're aware that the city has declared a fiscal emergency. The City Council will be holding a special meeting tomorrow night. At this point in time, we don't have any indication that the general plan update will be eliminated. As far as I understand, we will continue to move forward with that project. One of the biggest issues that we have, of course, is the fact of our social distancing and trying to hold meetings via video conference becomes a little bit difficult. We will be releasing another survey for residents to take. We'll send you an email once that survey is online relative to the general plan update and encourage you to disseminate that survey to others who may be interested in participating. That's all I've got this evening, Madam Chair. And again, thanks to all of you. I know this has been a bit of a challenge doing our meetings this way, but I certainly appreciate yourselves making yourselves available for this and your thoughtful comments and review of projects, even though we're not together in a room. Thanks.
Thank you. The meeting of the Planning Commission is adjourned until our next meeting will be Wednesday, June 10th, in City Hall and on Zoom.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good night. Nice to see you all. Miss you.